the best time to go live.
This is especially funny because of the last thing that Blaine sent me.
Oh, really?
What was the last thing I sent you?
It was the it was
We're
the
live, guys. We're live. This is.
Oh God. Okay, never mind.
Oh,
definitely
do
cannot.
not put that on stream.
I'm not putting it anywhere.
Yeah.
What's up, guys?
Hello, everyone. Hello. You've caught us in a moment of mirth. It has to do with Blaine's hat. Anyway. So, welcome to the Saturday live stream of your dreams, of your nightmares. It's been a couple weeks since we've had a live stream, so the usual folks are here. We have Mr. Blaine and then Mr. Listener. Mr. Listener. Gosh, I'm in a silly mood. Today we're going to talk about a number of topics. I really only had two, but I think you guys probably also have some other ones. The first one is
I filled out the deck.
you filled it out. Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Where do I find the deck?
It is in the chat for the VC itself. I can put it in the actual live stream.
Put it in,
too.
yeah. Put it in the live stream channel so we can actually reference it. But topic number one is skill issues in audio, and the title of that is a bit, or the phrasing of that is a bit spicier than I actually intended to be. So I'm not gonna sit here and call out people who I think have skill issues, but more to do with
I am.
Well, we can, but I was thinking of this more specifically in terms of why is it such a challenge sometimes to get into this sort of learning mode? There's a lot of resistance to certain ideas in various different places on the one hand, and then the other, even among those of us who have done the, let's say we're taking a particular view of audio in general, we still struggle with seemingly basic things. And I'd say this for people who I would consider to be on the more advanced side of things as well. And I'd say this for myself too, right? So it's you look back not that long, and it's like that version of me has the same skill issues, right? And I'm sure that in the future I could look back at my current self and say this person has skill issues. So
I mean, isn't that a good thing?
Yeah, it is a good thing. But I'm saying, so the topic is more why are some of these concepts such a challenge for certain parts of the community? And then the other side of it is even among the more sciencey focused stuff, are there reasons for some of the misinterpretations? So that's the one topic. The other topic I wanted to get to is, it's to do with science, the question of whether or not science has let down audio, essentially, or it's inspired from a quote from actually from Max Settings. Shout out to Max Settings for a quote that we actually disagree with. But I thought it was a good quote and an interesting topic, which is that
it's a good quote that's wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the point of discussing it. Yes.
Which is the biggest problem with the current state of audio science and why it's an underbaked field. It's basically the only field of research that I've seen that instead of trying to explain the human experience, it instead tries to discredit it. So I'm
going to bracket that with "that is wrong."
Yes,
that is
but I
incorrect.
enjoy this as a topic to discuss. That's why we're going to talk about it. But first, let's get into the question of skill issues. And if you guys want to just launch into it, I have some general thoughts, but I just want to get your guys' take on, I suppose, the question of why we're all sort of on a certain kind of journey in audio. A journey of learning and trying to understand this stuff better, and we take I think the three of us at least take an attitude that is along the lines of let's be open to new information, let's test things, let's research things, etc. Right? But if you go to well, maybe not Blaine because he's a curmudgeon, but when you go to certain corners of the hobby, essentially, there's a major resistance to taking this same journey or basically embarking on that path. And I want to get your guys' sort of thoughts as to why.
Well, I think that fundamentally it's sort of an abhorrent concept that something as trivial as headphones could be as complicated as it actually is.
as
I mean,
complicated.
Like, good
as
God. Yeah. I mean, like, the amount of actual work it takes to understand the acoustics, the psychoacoustics, all that bullshit with headphones is absurd, given that headphones are basically just a convenience device, which by all rights ought to cost less than what, $100.
Mm-hmm.
And yet here we are spending years of our lives literally discussing, researching, measuring, analyzing. It's so I think it does stick in people's craw that it is not simply easily knowable.
Do you think? I don't know that people are necessarily that self-aware about it, though.
Well,
You
I
know
don't
what I mean?
necessarily know that it's conscious, but I think that there is an instinctive thing of it cannot be this hard.
Yeah. I have a slightly different take as to why, and I think it's because it's a little bit related to the Frank Jackson "What Mary Didn't Know" thing, where basically it's like the and I apologize in advance, Griffin. Oh, you're perfect. You're frozen, so you can't hear the philosophy.
We need a sticker that pops up that's just like Frank Jackson mentioned.
Yeah, but
you just need that on your Stream Deck.
I do. Yeah, the sort of forcefulness and compelling nature of experiential knowledge, and we could even take this to the empirical lens, right? The compellingness of that. I think there's something inherent about the experience of listening to headphones that makes it difficult to take that step from this is the experience that I'm having to this is what's responsible for that experience. And when confronted with that step, there's a poor fit for people. And I think this is where some of the dissonance comes in. Griffin, what do you think?
So when we originally talked about this, I had a different idea of what to talk about. But now that we're where we are, and the way you kind of framed it as a reluctance to walk down this path in particular, I think a lot of people see themselves as going down the path of getting better or smarter in audio. It's just in a completely different way that we wouldn't really necessarily call that. Like, I think a lot of people are going down the path of like, okay, they start in the hobby, they buy a headphone or whatever, and then they buy an amp and they learn how to, hear the differences as they see them between amp A and amp B, and then they do the same with DACs, and then, maybe they go even further to cables and, more esoteric things like that. So I think most people are, if not trying to progress in some sort of intellectual or skill-based way, at least trying to progress in their understanding of what all is included in the hobby. That being said, I think it's obvious everyone in the call right now would regard that as going kind of opposite of better understanding of how these devices work and how your perception works. So I don't necessarily think it's as much like there are people who are trying to learn and there are people who aren't trying to learn at all. Yeah. It's more so that everyone's trying to learn, but the way that they're trying to learn is like either, the more science, psychoacoustics, and acoustics focused area, or like the buying stuff and trying to be able to discern differences between them, I guess.
Go ahead, I have a quibble.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
The science path includes many people who are taking a very simplistic view, and I would say, if anything, are not meaningfully better in their commitment to learning.
Than... I would honestly say that many of the people who are guilty of that are way worse than any of the people who are, just earnestly buying stuff to try it.
Yeah, but also I would say that there are a lot of people who are not as well versed in. They haven't been exposed to the thin end of the wedge or the top of the iceberg, however you want to call it, of the science side of things, and are very much open to learning a lot of things. They just don't have the exposure to it, and are more likely to go down, let's say, a path of discovery that could lead them ultimately to a far better place when it comes to this kind of understanding than the many people who have just been exposed to the top part of the iceberg. And then that's their whole worldview when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, It depends. Like I think for us, ignorance is probably not bliss.
No.
Like because we are like, all constantly probing for what the hell is actually going on with any of these devices when we use them. But I think for a lot of people who are just in it for the enjoyment of the experience, um, even if we made that information incredibly accessible, presentable, fun to engage with, there will always be people that uh, are more interested in the experiential parts. So like even just past like it being content to consume, they're probably more interested in consuming music than content about listening to music with audio devices.
Of course, yes.
We call these sane people where I come from.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like they are not and should not be regarded as the weird ones. Like we are absolutely the weird ones.
Yes.
Well, I mean, we're a subset of a subset, right? Like the average person buys a fancy headphone on drop because their favorite YouTuber was like gaming headsets suck, and then they enjoy music and go on with their lives. And then you have like the 10% of those people, so from here down to here, where they're like, oh, I'm gonna get really into this and no life it, and they're the ones who end up collecting amps or rolling tubes or getting involved in science arguments. And then you have us as this tiny little 1% of that 10% who really have just let it devour our entire lives and personalities.
So I was going to touch on that because I think that's right. Like I've approached. It strikes me as weird that other people aren't puzzled by this stuff in the same way that I am, but I shouldn't be surprised because that's insane. But
Yeah,
because for the entirety of like my interest in this hobby, it's been about, okay, why is my experience what it is, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe people aren't asking that question, or maybe if they are, it doesn't.
Philosophy major
it gets
moment.
satisfied a little bit more easily, and I'm just not satisfied.
Yeah.
And maybe you guys are the same. I don't know. But what would you say is sort of the biggest, to get to the topic title, skill issue in audio and in the community?
Wow, picking just one is very hard.
Yeah.
Okay, pick like your top 3.
I think if I had to choose one, it would be taking what other people say uncritically. Like regardless of who they are.
You mean
I think
somebody posts on a forum, hey, this, whatever has, what does whatever.
Literally
like,
anybody
okay.
who is not yourself. Like literally anybody who's not yourself who is, relaying their experience. Obviously we know that these experiences are mired in a whole bunch of individual things that would make it pretty damn certain that a lot of misalignment between expectations would occur.
Mm-hmm.
But I think regardless of who's speaking, whether it's, someone like us who are, obviously couch a lot of what we say in data to try and demystify that stuff, or like you say, just like a forum post, or maybe another YouTuber who isn't as focused on all of the graph stuff that we are, but maybe shows a squig link measurement or something like that. Anywhere on that spectrum, I feel like has plenty of room for misinterpretation and for someone to pay actual dollars for a product based on that expectation and then be disappointed with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if there's a skill issue, it is taking other people uncritically at their word.
Right. Right. And not considering, well, yeah, I mean, it's like, I can understand because there are so many other things in tech generally where the performance of that thing is invariant with respect to the user. And it's just so not the case with headphones. Like, yes, people are fallible. That's one thing, but like, confounding everything is the variant nature of performance for these things. And so it becomes very difficult to get a clear sort of constant picture of things from a report.
Yeah.
I was going to say that even if you look at like let's say the category squig link users, I've noticed the same thing as well, where it's like there's a certain reading and interpretation of graphs that lends itself, that actually perpetuates some of these skill issues. And but you know, you wouldn't want to say that the people who are doing this are, you know, no better off than the people who are just like anti-graph, I mean, I don't know if maybe we would say that, but like I would argue that at the very least that's better than, you know, using no data at all. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I would say I'm not as concerned with like categorizing them into like being skilled or unskilled as much as I am concerned with like the result. And
right.
like when it comes to the people who aren't doing anything with measurements, like they're generally in their silos, you know, in their comfy spots, you know, exchanging subjective impressions with other people, and like that's perfectly fine for them. Obviously, you know, it's not quite as deep an understanding as it could be, but I don't think it's necessarily, it doesn't have the same problem as people who misinterpret a measurement and then put that misinterpretation out there, because there's a little bit more authority to the squiggly line.
Right.
Like I feel like that gives some sort of vague sense of you know, this is science, or this is intellectually resilient.
Yes.
As my ideas.
At least.
Yeah, absolutely. Like once you've, you know, spent some time and, you know, paid attention to any of the discourse, you're disabused of those notions. But I think for a lot of people, they do take it as, you know, the graph is real.
I suppose I just wanted to mention that, like, for me, it's like the reason I kind of bring up or ask for top 3 is because, like, you do see it at so many different stages of the journey, you know, and I'm not entirely sure that there is a better here or worse. It's just there are similar sort of mental blockages, I think, and there just are mental blockages. Let's just
and physical blockages. Like obviously there are plenty of great papers out there in terms of acoustics, psychoacoustics, you know, headphone related sound stuff.
Right, and that's not to say that I don't have these issues as well. I certainly have, you know.
Right, and I've not read nearly as much as I should have on the subject. But I think there is an accessibility wall. I mean, sometimes there's literally a paywall in front of a lot of this stuff. But there is also an accessibility wall.
Difficult to, you know, comprehend and read through, or just, you know, takes time. Someone actually mentions here, how does someone misinterpret a measurement? I think this is actually a great thing to consider.
I commented in chat that should pretty much just be our third topic.
Yeah, sure. I think
like that is worthy of its own section.
Yes. What are your 3 things, Blaine?
Well, I mean, so one, I think that the received wisdom from other people, taking other people's impressions of the gospel is part of it, but I think that that's sort of part of this weird authority thing that happens in the community, where there's like hierarchies of rank of your opinions based on how many people follow your opinions and how closely you cohere with other people who are important. Like there's this weird dick measuring thing that happens in the community where there's people who are like, oh, this is a highly ranked critical listener who's significant on his particular forum or subgroup, whatever. And then their impressions are given extra weight. And if your impressions disagree, you're maybe downrated by those people. And if you agree, then it's weird. It's like kind of pseudo culty in some cases. And even if it's just groups of friends, it's fucking weird to watch. Because you can see consensus spread about it, like something that maybe wouldn't have happened if people weren't discussing it in these weird group settings with almost peer pressure. So other people's impressions, bad, dog shit, terrible. 2 is there's a lot of people who do the same thing, but for interpretations of measurements. There's a lot of people who do not understand any of the underpinnings of how we measure headphones, what those measurements mean, and the limitations of our interpretation thereof, who will still be like, oh, this is terrible based on this. This is great based on this measurement. You know, never having heard it and never even having had enough data to really evaluate it. to be clear, you can absolutely determine something is terrible based on measurement, but a single small peak doesn't terrible, which is a common
Sorry,
thing
you
I
cut
see
out there
from,
for a second. What was that?
sorry, a single small frequency response peak or dip doesn't make something terrible, and there are people who are in the, oh, but there's a slight deviation from the target, therefore this isn't even worth trying.
Many people are like that when they read a graph, because that's what a graph inherently looks like.
People who are like, somebody I know heard the Utopia once and said that it had no micro detail or whatever. The plankton wasn't good. Actually, nobody said that about the Utopia, but different.
Corinne's in the chat. What's up, Corinne?
Oh,
and Metal571. Shout outs to you guys.
Yeah, two of our favorite reviewers. Metal571 Comeback Tour 2024.
Yep, it's in the works.
What's this? Right, and the third one is that I feel like there's a pretty substantial, and this is like sort of the most endemic, but it's also hard to really point at because like people tend to burn out of this one as they get more experienced. But there's really an over positivity bias in audio. You see this a lot when you show high-end audio to new people. Like for people who are in the hobby, we kind of react against it to becoming like more cynical, maybe even excessively so. But people who are really new, almost always you hand them an expensive headphone, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's so novel. I heard something new that I never heard before. Even if it's the worst garbage that you have ever seen produced. I mean, like, I'm subtweeting some tech reviewers who have reviewed some objectively really bad IEMs, like the unequalized Odyssey IEMs. I think one of the tech reviewers said, oh, this is the best IEM I've ever heard. Because he heard, music didn't sound like this before. Because music isn't supposed to sound like that, because the FR of that IEM is dog shit without EQ.
Accurate.
So, and that one is one that because we're so deep into the trenches, we've all forgotten about that bias a bit. But people who are new very easily get conned into this sounds weird equals, oh my God, this is a new window into the reality of music I've never heard before.
But I'm thinking of I think it's MKBHD who's super into the Volure.
Is he?
Yeah. He loves that IEM.
I had no idea.
And but his description was exactly that. It was like you hear everything. You hear things you've never heard before. And it's like, yeah, you probably do.
You will definitely hear something you've never heard before.
Yes, that's certainly true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean that's not to take shots at people who enjoy that, but the idea that this is somehow universally good is what I would sort of
and that's what people fall into. Like people might have some weird niche taste. I mean, I have some weird niche tastes. I'm wearing one of my niche tastes. Okay, that
Andrew,
you can't go there anyway, particularly in the current climate.
That's true.
So, but no, I'm wearing one of my niche tastes in terms of I like a less bassy sound than is average, and like I objectively fall into probably a group that's less than 20% of listeners in that respect.
It's the Princess Leia cinnamon buns.
Okay.
Sorry, this is part of
just interrupting Blaine for that. Like, what's the point?
Even among the subset of people who like something even weirder, there probably is someone or some music where it just happens. Like, I've heard an Audio Technica that sounded good before, and almost no Audio Technica sounds good from an objective standpoint.
Oh, the R70X is reasonably good for the.
But I didn't mean the R70X. I meant one of the Air series, and the Air series have massive deficiencies. But sometimes, with the right music for the right person, they can be fun.
Yeah.
Critical asks why I'm precariously balancing my hat on my head. That is because it is 30 degrees Celsius here right now, and it is too hot to wear my hat fully on my head.
You could just not wear a hat, but
it's true. I could.
No, I prefer the hat.
No, it's gone now.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chad. I regret saying
you can blame Critical for that.
Or me.
Space Cowboy.
That's good.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are my top three. There's like, it's hard to list only three because there are so many problems in this community, but those are the ones that I think are the worst.
I want to maybe Griffin, you can give your top three in a bit, but I don't necessarily also have three specifically, but like certainly one of them is the whole idea that test tones are not music, and therefore it doesn't matter, right? Like, you see this all the time, and this is why I routinely badger Mr. Blaine for his section on myths about measurements, because it addresses exactly that. But I see it so commonly where people will completely dismiss the squiggly lines because test tones aren't music. And it's true, test tones aren't music, but there's that whole element that people don't seem to understand. They're not able to connect the dots for how a sweep might be indicative of their experience with music. That's maybe it's more just because that's currently on my mind, because I've been, perusing the Head 5 forums for a couple of different things, so I'm more likely to encounter it. That's really where you do encounter that a lot. But it would be great to just have like a finite like piece of content that I can say, but watch this. So this is just more thanks to Blaine to get that piece done.
It's why we're in the weird and bad scenario of us needing Blaine to do less so we can get Blaine to do more.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's... By the way, we have an offer to be joined by one Corin Aiko.
One who?
The well-known...
Crin's fake name.
Yeah.
The issue...
tell people that that's his alias.
The issue is that we're in our internal server.
Listen, we can remake this as a DM.
We'd have to remake this as a DM, basically.
Oh heavens, it will take us whole minutes.
All right, if you want to, go for it.
Invite him and only give him access to that channel?
If that's possible, do.
That is possible. Can you set up the roles? Just have like a guest role?
That's exactly what I'm doing.
Sure.
Okay. Corin, I can't take that seriously.
Why? I don't understand the reference.
That's what he tells people is his name.
But that's not his name. I know his name.
I know. We all know his name.
I actually don't remember his name.
Oh, what do you mean you don't remember his name?
Really?
Yeah, it's fine. I just call him Crane. But
no, it's fine. I'll just reveal his name on stream.
It's a great idea.
His real name is Corin Mansilla because he's Jude's.
Yeah.
Okay, so he says it's 3 a.m., so he's not going to.
Wait,
not going
did he say he's not going to?
Oh, I know. He says it's okay, boys. It's 3 a.m. I just assumed that meant it was bedtime.
No, he said if you don't mind webcam audio, he will.
We don't mind webcam audio, so by all means.
Crin has the most degenerate sleep schedule of anyone I know. He's definitely willing to join at 3 a.m.
All right. If you're able
when I say that, good God.
If you're able to joinicle, as Metal571 says.
What do you say?
This is on you guys, so whatever you're...
Yeah, I just invited him. I'm just making sure the role is going to work properly.
Okay. So other skill issues that I commonly encounter. I think the big one on the more measurements focused side of things is the one that Blaine mentioned, where people are scrutinizing things in data that are not perceptually relevant. But I think another one would be one that we're all kind of emerging out of, and it's the whole sign illusion thing, right? Not being like basically judging the graph for raw graphs, not realizing what the deviations actually are, and what the overall balance is, and when showing compensated or calibrated results, you can actually get a better sense of that. I think it's a really common thing on the measurement side of things. But then also, of course, it's the whole, like considering the data as like, the perfect indication of truth at all times about a given product, when in reality, it's just from one perspective. So I would say those are my top 3 on the measurements focused side of things.
I actually wanted to bring it back to why is Crin in the wrong voice chat?
I don't
know. Like, I checked with the roles. I know he can see this channel. Hold on. Actually,
that's very him, though.
Hold on. Let's see.
Well, maybe he's doing a mic check. You give him a sec. He might need a second. I mean, yeah, he can do that in Discord already, but we're asking a lot of, professional YouTuber here.
Yeah. But I wanted to touch on one of the things Blaine talked about actually, which was the kind of reinforcement that happens, the kind of positive feedback loop that happens when it comes to people's impressions online, whether it be how a measurement is digested or how like the headphone itself sounds. I feel like there should be a lot more disagreement than there generally is in these spaces. And I think part of that has to do with skill issues of people like not really being able to verbalize what their I guess positive and negative takes on a product are.
Yeah, I suppose I'm reminded of a conversation that I had with welcome Chronicle. I'm reminded of a conversation that I had with one of our sort of the niche of the niche folks, where this was at a Can Jam and it was sort of a larger group of people, and this person realized that the rest of the conversation was to do with things that were very easily explainable by FR the eardrum, and the comment was I something along the lines of like I realized this is getting into the skill issue questions or the skill issue discussions, and I thought to myself like yeah, like there is an element of that there, like I do get that, but I also think that like once people start to dive into EQ, and this is my soapbox of course, once people start to dive into EQ, it reveals so much about this stuff that that is itself a bit like the hurdle. Like that's the first hurdle I think that people need to overcome.
Yeah.
Critical, welcome.
Speaking of
What's
skills
up?
and issues.
Yes, I both.
Yep.
How's it going, man?
What are we talking about? Who are we roasting? Are we talking about how graph sucks?
Well, we're talking about how graphs suck, but also how people don't like graphs suck. So we're
So-
taking the radical centrist route.
Yeah, we're roasting both Headphone and ASR.
Also the route that I've been taking like the last 7 years.
I was doing this before you were.
Blaine came out of the womb doing this.
Well, that's not true. There was a time where I was more credulous than I am now, although still quite incredulous.
At age 40. So 20 years ago.
Yeah. Young Blaine.
No, this is no SBAF for us. No, we can include that in this as well. That's of course.
I don't think about them at all.
I just have.
I gotta be honest, I also don't think about them at all.
Yeah, maybe that's mean to say, but I don't mean it to be mean. I just slipped my mind. Okay, yeah, of course you do.
You guys know that technically in the most technical sense, I am a staff member on SBEF.
Wait,
How are you a
staff member?
staff member?
Like I swear to God, you just go to my profile,
I've
you
seen
will see the tag.
So wait,
what? I'm a
did
Facebook
they
friend.
just give it to you?
Like a while back before I started the website chronicle.com, I was trying to look for ways to share my quote unquote knowledge. And one of the avenues that I stumbled upon was like, maybe I can try and share it on SBEF. So they kind of gave me a sub forum, which I abandoned after like 6 months.
I do remember
Yeah.
that. I remember that era. That was the only era where I visited SBAF regularly.
Good old times, though.
Yeah. So, Chronicle, what we're talking about skill issues. What would you say are your top 3 picks for skill issues in the community, just for audio specifically?
Oh, this one, I can like go on forever about this.
Right?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Excellent.
Just 3 is the
The
issue.
biggest one, okay, the biggest one that I see all the time is just adherence to, could be a target or could be like how similar one graph is to another. And a lot of times I see people like there'll be deltas of like plus minus 3 decibels, but because there's a line that goes between this 6 dBs of delta, that people say like, oh, it's pretty much the same curve. And that kind of also goes into like how everything is regarded as Harman, even though, you know, the it doesn't match up to the Harman at all, but it kind of does at certain points, and therefore people say like, oh, this is a Harman IEM, and where very well it's not. So I don't. So that's like the biggest pet peeve that I have when people say like this IEM graph's exactly like that IEM, and I look at it and it's like, no, not even close. What the fuck are you on? And yeah, it's like the whole Dunning-Kruger effect, even though it's not. But yeah, where you have these people saying these kind of things so confidently, but you kind of just got to go in and be like, actually, it's not that close, and kind of they just say like, no, it's kind of close, but I don't know. I hate that side of the community, like graph sniffers, but they don't sniff correctly.
They don't sniff correctly.
Yeah, that's common. Okay, that's number
Very
one.
common.
What's number two?
Number two is maybe kind of in part proliferated by me. It's reviewer target curves, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That's
I love that.
Yeah, so I mean, I've kind of moved on into like, all right, let's just modify an existing target curve, and that would be much more accurate. But yes, that is the direction that I like to see it right now. But there are still a lot of people where it's like, oh, let's just draw a random line on a graph, and that's target curve, and it's like, okay, but how did you get there? And the problem is that some people try and listen to the target curve, they think it sounds good, and then that becomes their target curve. And again, I know that this is a problem that I have contributed to in the early days, but you can't blame me because I kind of did this for like a decade at this point. So mistakes were made, but I did it because there was literally no one else doing it. So I have the excuse.
Just so you guys know, the live chat, the chat in this window goes to the live stream.
We're aware.
Okay, good.
Hey, I was thinking Sean posted something cool on Twitter.
Yeah, it was the car with the anime.
No.
stuff.
No. That is not what he was posting.
That is
Get
not
your mind
cool.
out of the gutter, Andrew.
Having anime stickers on your car is not cool.
No, it certainly isn't.
want
But I
that
thought
to
it was
be
hilarious
on-
that Sean posted it.
On the record, official position of this program.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And that includes you, Kren.
Yes.
What?
No
You
anime
will not
details
convince
on
me
your car,
that
young
you
man.
don't have anime decals on your Titan.
So the guy had a bumper sticker that said, "Hey hentai."
Oh dear.
So
You didn't have to get specific.
well, and I just thought it was hilarious that Sean was like roasting, whoever it was, right?
He wasn't even roasting. He was just like asking about
It's like,
it.
what are they
is
doing?
this about?
Yeah. Okay, so Kryn, to do with the reviewer targets thing, I do want to I'm very critical of this as well, but I do want to give you a pass because I tend to think that there's a overall net positive to people challenging convention, even if ultimately
Why?
that's not the best outcome. Let's say, why?
Yes.
Thomas Kuhn. Should we really get into this?
Oh my god. That's just one step away from fucking Paul Feyerabend.
Yes, it is.
And frankly, you all
Guys.
belong in hell together.
We don't need to go there. I do think the proliferation of reviewer targets has run a little bit rampant, and that is a problem. But I think if we didn't have alternatives like IEF, there would be sort of this dogmatic hurling into the abyss where what we think of maybe now as an outlier is taken on faith and not really questioned or scrutinized. And now I think that in part it's due to things like sort of the groundswell behind IEF that we see, let's say, what we call the new meta in IEMs, right? It's not directly that, obviously, but I think you can kind of trace the roots of it back to some of that. And I think ultimately
like
that's a good
everything
thing.
kind of just goes back to all like starting out on the whole graphs database thing. I think the reason why reviewer targets got so much traction nowadays is also because of the proliferation of Squiglink, which is shout outs to Mark Ryan. Amazing repository and just gives access to to the common man to be able to compare graphs. But because of that, everyone who now owns a database of their own on Squiglink can also upload their own target curves, and therefore every reviewer now would be kind of incentivized to publish their own target curve, for better or for worse.
Often for worse, because it's I remember posting a
no, it's like good and bad, right? It's good because Squiglink exists. And that's also the reason why it's good, because there's the proliferation of easily accessible measurements that is community driven, and I think that's amazing. But it has that bad side effect of like, all right, so now we're giving a voice to the people, and now they are using their voice to create target curves that may or may not make sense in the grand scheme of things. Some, like you said, most of the time it doesn't make sense, and it's like the bad born out of the good. I don't know how to solve this. So to me, it's just kind of like I'm just taking it in stride.
I think it's like the cat's out of the bag on that one, right? Like it is going to be a thing, right? But I would have less of a problem with it if it weren't possible to mix up the data, like mix up different rigs with different targets. So, I posted
there's solutions to that specific.
There are, and they're not hard to do, right? You can
with the whole like delta compensation, not delta target, the delta compensation that is ironically compensated to my rig, but that's a different topic altogether.
I think it's interesting because now, like, yes, I think we're all aligned on reviewer targets being a problem trademark. But I feel like with Crin's site in particular, starting with that whole tilted, like compensated the DF and then tilted thing, I find that, at least in my experience in the community, a lot of people they have more scrutiny of a measurement picture that is posted somewhere and being like, oh, that target isn't what I would do. Could you put it over this target? Whereas when people would just kind of see a graph that uncritically had an IEF neutral 2020 or Harman 2019, there are plenty of other problems with how measurements are presented, but I find that people are at least more aware of what their own preference would be based on a human-like head-related transfer function baseline.
Well, but a lot of this is also to do with what people are used to. And if you take people out of their comfort zone, there's immediately going to be resistance to the new paradigm, whatever that might be.
Sure. Yeah. And I think largely the story of 2023 was like, us being in a target's Wild West and constantly having to make incremental steps forward. Because, like, us being the people who are largely behind a lot of this stuff coming to the community, our understandings were evolving too. Like, as we're learning to use the 5128 and being exposed to new theoretical ideas, like, things should change, but it's pretty tough when you're one of the people in the community, like, trying to keep people updated on those changes as they come.
Yeah, and shout outs to Joel as well, because he's also responsible for it.
Joel's like a huge mind behind all of the theoretical learning that, like, specifically Andrew, Blaine, and I have gone under. And now Crane has JM1 on his database too, which is big win. Might need to change soon, but
yeah, like next week.
Big win.
Well, no, all right, probably not the topic for the live stream, but I'm still not entirely clear on why we're so fixated on such small changes, because that sort of fits into my general I don't care about small high Q features stance.
I think it's more just to
Are you talking about the 5K difference?
I'm talking about the your canal transfer function.
But isn't it
28?
Well, isn't it just more to kind of like validate rather than
I mean, it's a sanity
estimate?
check. It's just I wouldn't necessarily expect
so
it to be a big change.
That me neither, right? And that's why it's like we might need to update it, not necessarily, right? Or like it might be, if there's an update, it might be a very small one.
I mean, it in my opinion, it probably will be small, but I am very interested in seeing how.
I've heard that from a lot of people.
how the canal transfer function will differ from the 711, and how the relationship between the pinna's contributions and the canal's contributions might be different.
Yes. Kryn, we need one more skill
thing you hate.
The skill issue that you come across in the community.
It's not necessarily a skill issue, but it's more like the proliferation of clone 711s that is a bit tough to control for. That's all I can say about it. Again, the whole like the Delta project thing on Scriggling is helping to minimize the confusion.
I mean, but you and I both know there are very, very notable limits to that.
There's a very huge asterisk on like all these things. Yeah, so like I said, I'm all for the proliferation of the publication of measurements, especially one that is as on a scale like Squiggling, where the community is the one that is contributing to the measurements and kind of also taking the heat off of me, because it used to be that I get like hundreds of thousands of requests to measure X IEM, Y IEM, and now kind of just go on Squiggling, and it's and no one really asks me. That is until the point where people will be like, "Can you measure this on the 5128?" In which case, I'm like, "Okay, I still get a few hundred requests for that a day," which is
like, hey, Axel,
good thing and bad thing. Which is why that like the whole 5128 clone project, which I shouldn't talk about, but yeah, that's a different topic.
That's exciting. I mean, yeah,
we are all very excited about that. So whenever
it's inspired me to something that's even weirder.
Yeah.
Sorry, what'd you say, Blake?
What?
Nothing.
Terrible.
I mean, we're also trying to do things with, doing printing different ears and stuff like that,
Oh, actually, I was going to, well, probably not the place for internal project updates, but I just wanted to note, I've been having super good success in printing molds, and after thorough post-processing, getting mold release on 0035 silicone.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Glenn.
05. Oh, okay.
35. Although I actually got some 0010 as well, because I want to test some more wiggly ears.
Well, mine are pretty wiggly, right? They're pretty. There's a.
Just gonna scoot into Blaine's DMs real quick.
Implying you ever leave my DMs.
Okay. We had another topic here. I don't know if unless you guys want to talk more about skill issues.
No. I want to discuss the underbaked take.
Yeah. So let's reiterate the underbaked.
Are you aware of this, Kren?
Take. We're gonna basically.
Yeah, please keep me up to speed.
Yeah, we're gonna throw max settings under the bus here.
It's in the VC chat.
Just because I know he can handle it.
Okay. What does Max have to do with all this? I thought he's the opposite of a graph sniffer.
Yeah, no. So like
Max keeps.
This is a quote from him.
Up on it.
Yeah, that I enjoyed the quote, even though we think it's wrong. So the quote is, "This is the biggest problem with the current state of audio science, and why it's an underbaked field. It's basically the only field of research that I've seen that instead of trying to explain the human experience, it instead tries to discredit it." So I suppose reframing this would be: is audio science trying to discredit the human experience?
I think it's in the same way like how just like discrediting the placebo effect, I guess. Like there's the human experience, and then there's also psychoacoustics, which we all know is the human brain is a fickle piece of meat that tries to convince us of things that are greater than they actually are.
I mean, like, is the study of optical illusions trying to discredit visual perception?
Yeah, it's like.
So, but this is why I like Teal's paper. I mean, we all like Teal's paper, but like, it is literally trying to explain some of this stuff, right? Some of these, well, specifically with regards to timbre. But like, to me, it's like I feel like it requires
timber.
Yeah, it requires a particular view of the research, and I don't know if this is. Do you guys think this is like uniquely targeting like Harman, or is there a view where this makes sense? Basically, like, is there an element of audio science that is more?
I can provide a counterpoint at least, because at least with the recent 5128 that came out, I've been trying to explain the whole concept of BA base for the longest time. I didn't know how, because obviously I'm not an audio engineer. I have AES subscription, but I'm not an audio engineer. So back then, and I'm talking like maybe 2016 or 2017, all I heard was BA woofers sound like shit. I don't know how to explain it. I just hear it as it is. But if you measure it on a 711 with the theoretical perfect leakage and whatnot, everything looks fine. And therefore people would be like, look at the measurements, everything is fine, it's all in your head. And to me, it's like, no, it's a very clear difference in the difference between like
to be
BA
fair,
bass
it
and dynamic
was
bass.
all in your head.
Yes, technically, yes.
Just your pose there too.
So, but yeah, so with the 5128 coming out and suddenly all the leakage effects that we now know that differs from 711, that we can finally definitively see that, all right, some IEMs, even though they measure with this amount of bass on the 711 and, measuring the deltas compared to something else, suddenly the deltas are different now on the 5128 and different in a way that does explain the existence of this so-called fabled BA bass. So that was one of the new things that kind of proved the human experience in my case. Sure, like some people would have been able to explain all of this back in the day, but no one did. Everyone just referred to the 711 measurements and said that, hey, this is all in your head. You're just imagining things. It's just placebo. And then now that new data has come out, it's like, oh, wow, okay, BAs really do suck at reproducing bass frequencies, or at least some BAs.
The
ones that
impedance
was
sources in general.
Would you say that was a win for the subjectivists?
Yes and no.
Because
I'm the guy. I'm the centrist, right? I don't call myself a
you're the
subjectivist.
fence
I don't call myself an objectivist. I'm the one who made the 711 database, but at the same time, stuff like this where I hear it's like I hear it. It's clearly there, but I can't explain it, and the graphs don't make sense. What the fuck is it? I don't know.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
but that's not an example of the science, though. Like,
No, so
that's just a bunch of assholes on the internet.
But that's where
Right.
I think the primary
yes.
contradiction in this quote lies, is
Yes.
that Max isn't talking about the science. He's talking about the noobs who have like heard a bit about Harman's research and then go to HPHQ and tell people that HD 560S is the best headphone of all time.
Yeah, I mean,
Sure.
if you sub out the science for assholes on the internet, then it makes
it's a
total sense.
But there are
Yes.
people who think of it that way. They think, oh, science is literally audio science review. That is the only.
There's also people who
science.
think that they're Napoleon. So I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
well, I don't doubt that there are folks in the asylum who believe
You make
things.
them seem crazy, but
They are insane.
There is a large cohort of these people.
Yeah, they're a large cohort of the deranged.
Sure,
and we shouldn't
okay.
take them seriously.
Yeah.
Yes,
But
but
I mean,
I think it's important. It's important to say that like it is just those people. Like the science that we generally respect is basically never intentionally trying to discredit the human experience.
Well,
Like there are different goals for different papers. So like when it comes to like Harman's work, I don't necessarily think they're trying to explain the experience either. They're just trying to like quantify it. Like they're just asking the question, what do people prefer? And then
in the strictest sense,
putting
yes,
up controls, accepting the answer.
If you talk to Sean, if you interview him, there's some stuff that comes out of that.
If you interview him, then a giant anime girl appears in the background.
Only in Denmark. But yeah, I do think there's what actually happens in the science, and then there's the way that even sort of the figureheads kind of run with it. And sometimes that element does run over into this sort of discrediting of things. And maybe I as much as we call, some of these people, the crazies, right, or the insane asylum people, I don't think it's quite as categorical as that. I think there are a lot of people who I think rightly are burned by some of the or rightly have a lot of disdain for some of the unnecessary price tags, for example, or some of the insanity that exists in audio, and see this as a kind of like a lightning rod for sanity, right? To inject some of that back into the space, and it comes with this extra element of cynicism, and so the discrediting aspect is kind of part and parcel with that, I think, and it doesn't mean that it's necessarily in the science, but it is like born out of the science, if that makes sense. I'm not.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people who once they've read a modicum of the existing research out there, they just feel like okay to start crapping on other people who haven't.
Right.
It's a self-aggrandizement thing, I notice a lot.
Yeah,
of the
I mean, there's definitely an element of that. Yeah.
They should just get bigger hats. That would make them feel grand on its own.
That's the secret.
Yeah. But it's like when we were doing that live stream with Sean. Actually, no, this is before the live stream. I was in an email conversation with him where I asked him about some of the fine-grained issues in IEMs and how that might affect the research outcomes, and he thought it was something to investigate. He said it was that the outcomes it wouldn't actually affect the outcomes, but he thought it'd be interesting to investigate. There was no sense of like we need to discredit this concept of the fine-grained stuff actually mattering, right?
Yeah.
And or any of the maybe the experiences related to that. It was more that it didn't seem to have an effect overall on the outcomes of the research. So to me, it's like if you do get into the weeds on that stuff, you do find that there's no intention to do what Max is sort of alleging there.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I think I would chalk that quote up to a misattribution of the science, right?
Yeah, what Max sees is not the people doing the science. What he sees is the people coming into Headphone headquarters with
he's gonna watch this and be like
very, very little experience.
Yeah,
and
he's gonna watch this and be like, you guys are dicks.
Well, we are dicks.
Yes, but specifically to him.
I think he would acknowledge it as correct though, because
yeah,
I mean, just from what I see of his activity online, like that's generally what happens. It's mean-spirited people who come into a space just to crap on other people.
Is there? I'm trying to sort of steelman here, right? This claim. Is there an element of because people were very much focused on 7-Eleven, and there was existing established targets for 7-Eleven from the science. There was definitely a resistance to adopting the 5 and 2/8 and an active sort of anti I don't know what you would call it, new paradigm sentiment in the science-focused communities, a resistance to the idea that there's a more accurate acoustic impedance, all this stuff, right? I mean, we've all seen this commentary. But if we hadn't tried to push that boundary, we wouldn't have ended up with the human experience of, as Critical said, DD bass versus BA bass being a highly relevant thing. We wouldn't end up being able to explain that if we hadn't tried to push that boundary. And in this sense, it's like there is resistance to,
some of it rightfully so. I think there's a reason to be skeptical.
Mm-hmm. That's fine.
Of any of this stuff. Obviously, a lot of it does have scientific underpinning that, upon inspection, gives it a basis. But there are a lot of things we still don't know, and
certainly,
especially like a year ago, 2 years ago, we knew even less.
Yeah, so and I would say we're better for
our understanding has matured, but
yeah,
I understand people who were skeptical a year ago about the 5128's adoption. Maybe not all of them, because there were some better reasoned qualms than others.
Sure.
But yeah, I get being critical of something brand new and shiny and expensive and with not that much data behind it as far as actual measurements out there. Because that was the case, a year, 2 years ago.
I have an alternative steelman.
Sure.
So this steelman starts by saying, like, framed as it is, Max's take is just objectively wrong at a number of levels. But you can say An issue I have with audio science is that there is more research that devotes itself to disproving effects than trying to find plausible explanations for them.
But that's just science.
And that is science. Now, to be fair, there is a concern where there are possible effects which are lost in the noise, right? Like, it's possible to have an effect which is below the measurement noise of a listening test, which is not going to, like, let's say that there's something that's a subtle FR difference, or like the FR is slightly more jagged or whatever. That's probably something where you can get it to a level, maybe it's plus minus 1 dB, maybe it's plus minus 0.5, where you're not going to hear that consistently in a test of 10 runs, maybe even 20 runs. But you would, I mean, it's audible, it's above the threshold of audibility. And so theoretically with training, you would hear it over and identify it correctly over, say, 100 runs. But if you just said, okay, can people hear this? And you just did a trivial experiment, you say, okay, well, they couldn't pick this out at a level higher than chance.
Yeah.
So there are small effects that can get lost. The same as the problem with distortion stuff, right? Like, we can say conclusively with headphones that have distortion that is, let's say, in the style of the HD600, right? Distortion is not a problem that is a dominant factor in preference. But we can't say headphone distortion is inaudible based on the research we have. What we can say is it's not the big thing. Or in many cases, it's not even enough to tip an experiment.
I think that's the keyword.
Well, but that's the thing. It may be perceptually relevant, but just a minor factor.
Yeah, and you might find this if that's what you're that's what you're specifically trying to suss out over a long period of time, and people do, as you say, get better at it. I mean that does hit on a key point, which is that the best available research that we have, which that being the Harman research, isn't necessarily trying to suss out these things. It's more pointed at preference, and so the way that
it's looking at the majority effect.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
thing.
Exactly. So that's going to override some of the things that are potentially perceptually relevant, but not, they don't make up. Goodness there doesn't make up for badness for the big effect.
Well, I mean, let's imagine that I'm doing a review of chairs, and that, one of the parameters that I'm varying is the cushion material. One of the parameters is the cushion geometry. Chairs made with stone, steel, acid, etc. will probably score under chairs made with foam, but that doesn't necessarily tell me about the ideal geometry.
Someone needs to clip that. Chairs made with acid.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and you say that because actually we
built a chair out of pure lie.
We do. We are currently trying to find better chairs, so it is relevant.
You're trying to find a better chair too?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm tempted by the Hayworth sales. They have some pretty good deals there on their site.
I'm telling you, you still have to try those weird Canadian guys.
Oh, Lifeform? It's just they're so expensive. It's like $2,500 for a good one.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's
and
brutal.
It's in Canada, so.
Yeah, and well, it's way worse here.
Yeah. I have
Finding
no doubt
the
that
Harman Miller chair.
The Harman
Miller. I will say, I really like the Aeron.
Right now. You really like which one?
I like the Aeron.
You like the Aeron? No, you're using the Mira too.
Yeah, that's because I found it in a dumpster.
Okay. Yeah, I have an
actually
Aeron.
like
most
Mira
of my
more than
possessions.
Aeron.
I have an Aeron that I can't use. I'm gonna just put it outside and see if someone takes it.
Oh, yeah, then someone else can find it in a dumpster.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, you could just sell it. You could probably get like $200 for that.
Yep, probably. Corinne, do you have a optimal chair?
I like steel case.
Oh,
bad take alert.
Now, are you talking Leap V2 or Gesture or what?
The Leap, yeah.
Leap?
The Leap V2.
Okay.
I like that one. I don't know why. Okay, I know why. It's because I can't cross my legs in an Aeron.
Okay, so I have a chair for you as someone who sits stupidly. So Lifeform makes a version of the chair that has segregated the cheeks so you can move your legs separately. Andrew, can you pull this up on stream?
No.
I will send you an
segregated
image.
cheeks. I'm not.
It is the most hellish thing you've ever seen. It's kind of compelling, though. I think that you might like it. Hold on. Wait, I can't post links in chat.
Nah.
So
in my office, I got like the real Gamer Boy chairs because we got them for free. So in my home office, I'm like my back is healthy, and then in my office, I'm a gamer boy.
Right.
Blaine, that looks kind of cursed.
Oh, it's so cursed. I got one of these because someone didn't want it because it's hellish.
I don't actually.
It's
have
in
it.
the live
sounds
stream
hellish.
chat. If you just
I
wanna-
know. I don't. I have it popped up in a second.
Just listen, show the people. They need to
Can
understand
you
what
send
I
it to me
mean.
in like general?
In general, in this
Yeah,
server?
yeah. Just because it's easier for me given the way that I'm capturing the thing. Okay. This, right. I'm gonna hold on a second.
So I have actually, and this is like one of the most cursed devices I've ever seen. It's surprisingly compelling for a while to sit in it though, and it does avoid that whole you feel a need to shift your weight all the time thing. And it allows you to have your
Wait.
your.
So you bought this?
Well, I got it from somebody for like $100 because it's cursed. So I found someone who
Yeah.
was selling it on
So-
Craigslist.
So
You're
we've
looking at a
gone-
chair seat, chat.
We've gone off the rails early here, but I just when you mentioned that.
Oh, Constantine's here.
What?
Yo, chat is lit.
Constantine. Hey, Constantine.
So Taryn just sent me a screenshot of my conversation with him about this, where I said I could have
He
gone
sent
the
it to me
rest of
too.
my life without thinking about Blaine's butt cheeks.
Oh.
I think that still applies.
He sent me a screen cap of Blaine saying, "Gotta keep them separated."
Yeah. Gotta keep them separated. Okay.
Not a very good song, to be honest.
No.
The Offspring are bad.
I agree. Anyways. So back to the topic at hand. Are there any further thoughts on basically like the direction of audio science and
Well, I think before we got derailed into inanity and oddity, the thing I was saying was like you can make an argument that there is not enough focus on the small details. You know, like that's the steel man that I would
Yeah.
see of Max's take is that once you have a headphone that has a good FR, that has good ergonomics, etc., there may still be things which are not captured in the current research because that's concerned itself mostly with the broad strokes.
well, and this is why I say that it's often the outcomes of the research that get, well, not even the outcomes of the research, but basically like the way that gets used in common parlance about audio stuff is with the view to discredit the human experience, and not necessarily to keep an open mind towards some of that stuff that should be investigated.
Chat says the chair you sit in is part of the listening experience. This is more relevant than it may seem.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I would be interested in seeing the effect of uncomfortable and more comfortable chairs on people's subjective ratings of sound quality.
Yeah, like I basically live in a constant state of debilitating back pain, and this is probably
I feel like that's why maybe you should consider an expensive chair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Or you could get one of those freaky ones that like they rotate you.
Okay.
Do you know which one I mean? Like they have like the zero gravity chairs.
What?
Wasn't there like audiophile chairs for like the 2-channel world at some point?
I mean,
Like the Eames chair?
yeah, like people buy Eames chairs a lot.
Ghost Eames chair.
That's
Yeah.
someone chat says Blaine seems to know a lot about freaky chairs for some reason. I'm
Yeah.
concerned with ergonomics. I'm concerned
Yeah,
with
Blaine
ergonomics
is
because my
just an
wrist makes
ergonomic
horrible
guy.
crunching noises, and
You
I
should
have
see
to
his
stop
keyboard.
more of my body.
Or keyboards.
My keyboard is not that weird. My keyboard is gonna get weirder.
Oh, I'm no doubt.
Exciting.
I'm gonna make a 3D printed one that has trackballs on each thumb.
Yep, of course you are.
Oratory says that you want your chairs not to affect the sound. That's correct, which is why every audiophile should buy stools.
Mad ergonomist. No, I
I'm
think
not going to use a stenographic keyboard.
I think no, we've wrapped up the Max's take thing.
Mhm.
Do you want to get on to topic number 3 here, which is the ways in which people misinterpret graphs? Pulled from the chat.
Normalization.
What's that?
That's a big one. That's a big one, Crane.
The normalization.
Oh, yeah.
That's the big one.
It is
Yeah.
big.
Anybody remember
it
that
is the way
own
that-
AR5000 graph?
What
Normalized.
AR5000?
Oh,
What, on ASR?
yeah, normalized it. I mean, to be fair, normalized in the same spot that I think he normalizes everything, but it's like so not perceptually relevant.
Well, which one is it?
I think it's AR5000.
Yeah, it's the AR5000.
Okay, so if I search that and I go to
Just
Yeah,
frequency response. I thought it
Should
was the
be.
first one I saw.
oh yeah, you're the because Amir matches at like 500
500,
hertz for
yeah.
the right channel.
So stuff like that is I mean that I would say that also falls into the category skill issue, but it is it's a common issue. I think there's this one who Psy did another one that normalizes it closer to like 1K, although he's not using
I think his native normalization on his site is actually 440 hertz.
size. Yeah, could be with this
That's
one.
weird.
It's a little strange.
Is it A440?
Yeah, I mean that's the only reason I could think of he would choose 440 hertz. Like I don't know if Psy's a musician, I don't know his background, but that would be the only explanation I could think
Wait,
of.
is Psy the same as Unheard?
Yes.
Unheard Lab? Okay. Very cool.
But
Yeah,
yeah, I'm glad
pretend
you
I
bring it
know
up,
what this is.
Corinne. Normalization is definitely one of the ways where we can present something that looks on its face objective or scientific, but it's actually a very subjective process choosing where you normalize. And obviously, some people do just follow the old IEC standard of 500 or 1000, and that's it. But it can lead to a lot of issues like we're seeing with the AR5000. So then the question is where? And
Well-
actually, I am going to take this opportunity to ask you if you know, Crin. The dB normalization inherent to Crin graph. What is that based on?
Mhm. Oh man, if I remember correctly, and I wish that Marshall Lockboom is here right now. Isn't it on the Crin graph GitHub? Like how he explained how it's kind of like he used, I believe, free field or equal loudness contours on free field, and then he just kind of like reverse engineered kind of the entire calculation process. So that I do know that equal loudness plays a huge part in the.
So
in the
he compensates
normalization.
the FR to equal loudness, and then he
On a
averages
free field
it.
basis.
Yeah, and then he averages it, and then that's the alignment point by default.
I believe so, yes. But again, this is Marshall's genius that is at work here. I am just the guy who was like, great job, it kind of works and everything looks fine, I guess.
Yeah, you know, I had never actually thought to look at his release information, but yeah, I'm on his GitHub.
Just go to Marshall's Crin graph, and I think most of the explanations are there.
Cool.
But the DB normalization one is goes way over my head. Like this is just way beyond my pay grade.
Got it.
So I think, listener, you and I will start by going 630 hertz with the 3-octave span, something like that, right?
Yeah, I usually do that or 400 hertz with the 2-octave span.
It depends on the headphone because you can't.
It
always,
does, but that's the thing. It does, and like if you're just doing one thing every single time, you're gonna end up with some perceptually irrelevant to even yourself presenting the measurement results.
Okay, so
I mean,
that's
really, I suppose what we should actually do, like, is hold on, let me think about this thing. Yeah, no, what we should probably do is we should just put them on heads, like set them to a normal playback level for you, right? And then record that absolute level, right? And so do a measurement with the gain at that amount. So obviously it's gonna be interpersonally variable, but then we would actually see how loud you're listening to these things and how they would actually line up.
So the thing is, so you would, in this case, because we're normalizing between, let's say, headphone A and headphone B, you would be listening to both of them, setting ideal level for yourself.
Well, I mean, and if you just have a measurement that you measured at the loudness that you personally listen at, you would have that in the data. and then you would just have that just be the default. Of course, that would also lead to very odd results, like some things which would align at no frequencies. But that would itself be kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's not inherently bad. It just if it's more perceptually relevant that way.
Constantine says you'd get about 3 to 6 dB of variation, which is too much for plotting purposes.
Yes, it sounds like a very far from a hit kind of methodology, where it just kind of sounds kind of there, and then you're just like, all right, that's the level.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would be interested actually to find out how variable the levels people set are between sessions for the same headphone and the same content, but that's a separate problem. Obviously, the actual answer is that you just use an average in the mid-range. Like, that's what everyone functionally does.
Well, it's not something you can do on SwigLink, which is or Crin's measurement tool or my measurement tool. So like that is something that is pretty much only done by people using Rue.
Yeah, I mean, I wish that we had that alignment functionality in our tool. Where we could
just use CreanGraph, man. What the hell? I've been telling you guys to do just that.
CreanGraph doesn't have existing support for it. We would have to build that out custom.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. But at least you have a base, though. As opposed to just restarting from scratch.
You know, we're getting there.
You've been getting there for 3 years now. Where is it?
It's a good question.
This is something.
It is a good question, but I do genuinely think we're getting there.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons that I'm glad that I can't code, so I cannot take any of the blame for this delay, at least.
No, in fact, it's not. None of us can take blame for this delay. But
it is someone must be blamed.
Yes, yeah. But it is still a work in progress. Actually, the person who can be blamed is in chat right now. No, I'm just kidding. not the person who can be blamed, but the person who can be lobbied to increase its the speed with which it's getting developed. Okay.
But on the actual topic of this whole like normalization thing, right? Is that how you normalize also would affect how you one thing is how you EQ things, or in my case now is how you manufacture things. For example, and I swear I'm not trying to plug, but it is very relevant here, like how the dusk was tuned from analog to the whole DSP default thing. If you took a 711 graph and if you normalize it by 1000 hertz, the intuitive answer was to actually you boost everything under 1000 hertz. You do a low shelf filter, start at like 800 hertz, I believe, and you increase it by about 2 or 3 decibels, and that was how you would get that low mid, that kind of dark tilt that you get. But at the same time, we don't, like, for example, in my case, I don't have a low shelf filter. I can't do that, and I feel like that's also more complicated. What I did instead was that instead of normalizing at 1000 hertz, I normalized more at like 100 hertz instead. And then what I did was, all right, in that case, what I could do is actually just one simple filter, which was one that was targeted specifically at 1400 hertz, and decrease the Q factor to like 0.8, and that achieved exactly the same as you would with a low shelf filter. So the way that you normalize would affect how you would approach an EQ profile like that. So either you could boost the bass technically, or you could, in a complete reversal, drop the center mid range, and you achieve the exact same effects. But so the whole like normalization things would let you see things like this. And of course, let you do stuff that would be either more complicated or less complicated. Because if I did a low shelf filter, I would have to do a negative pre-gain, and as opposed to just like one singular negative filter, which just solves everything with just that one filter.
Yeah, I think that was a really good idea, and I think I'm not sure that would have been as intuitive if the 5128 hadn't like been out already and people had kind of had their ideas about normalization challenged a bit. I feel like when we were using your 2020 target on 711, like 500 hertz worked just fine most of the time. 1000 hertz worked fine most of the time. But once we moved to 5128, things got a little murkier as well. And I think even Sean had to move from his like typical 500 hertz normalization up to like a 630 hertz normalization or something like that.
Yeah.
I think for 5128, I don't have a hard number per se, but I would like to think that something closer to 300. Because the 5128 has that dip at 400. I'm not sure we should be addressing for that. I want to say 300. 300 seems like a nice number.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe 315. Just to fit into the octave scheme.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I feel like that dip it's there for me. It might not be as sharp in Q or as dipped as it shows on the rig, but I do hear that dip when filled in being an improvement.
I still don't like it. Every IEM I've tuned so far that added the 400 hertz, which I could, just adds to the mud, and I just don't like it.
Reasonable.
Like, I would have to raise the 3 to 4K range to kind of counterbalance that, and that doesn't sound great to me as well.
I don't think you need to do both.
I like to keep that, yeah.
But you could do both.
I like to keep that. like what do you mean? The low mids, the 400 hertz boosted as well as the 3K boosted?
Yeah, like well, my conjecture on this is that you don't necessarily need to reduce 3K and boost 400. You could do one or the other, and it would still be perceptually good.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what Dusk does, right? Because it doesn't fully fill that in, but it does cut 3K.
Yep.
Yeah, I prefer to cut 3K personally myself, because I think increasing the 400 hertz range just makes everything sound very boxy, and I just don't like that.
And now you just got to cut 5K as well, 5.3K.
That's easy.
I mean, he did with us,
but not enough.
Project
you
Meta.
need to cut it more.
Project Meta eventually.
Yes.
Okay, here's the thing: is that Project Meta is I added in the low mids, but I feel like there was a prototype with the treble that is almost exactly to like tilted GM1, but I heard it and it was so dull and blunted. I had to add like 5 to 8. More like 8 actually, 8 dBs extra compared to like tilted GM1, which I know a listener is going to say like that is way too bright, but for me it's like I like the dust was tuned like that, and so even Project Meta I'm just gonna boost up 10K plus because it just sounds better.
Are the mids similar to Dusk where it's like 8 dB tilt with 3K dip?
Somewhat there, yeah. It's gonna be. Yeah, it's going to be like, at least on a 711, the 400 hertz is going to be 2 dBs extra relative to 1000 hertz.
Okay.
I'm inclined to agree with Critical as far as the 10K plus stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's completely reasonable. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people would agree with you guys on that.
Yeah. Well, we fight internally all the time about upper treble, so that's why. Oh,
no.
Blade's camera temperature died. I just wanted to
my camera's dead? What happened?
Yeah, it overheated.
Too high temperature.
Yeah, you got to put it into
ice
1080p mode, and then you're probably in 4K mode, and that's probably why it's doing that. I just wanted to take a moment to address one of the comments in chat,
1080p mode,
which Blaine has been engaging with, which is just use one measurement rig. If graphs are off, they're all off and limited on the same parameters. A highly accurate measurement is overrated. There's a couple of things in there, but I wanted to... Yeah. I think this kind of... At least my read of this comment, and it could be that something else is intended here, but I think this speaks to what graphs look like, which is people mistake them for being kind of like the perfect... idealized representation of a headphone's performance when they're just one perspective. They're just one head's representation on one head, basically. And I think people aren't aware of just how things can vary when you change the head. There's another comment in here. Sorry, this is getting all to the topic at hand, which is the way the measurements get misinterpreted. And maybe we can go back to that. But I saw another one that I wanted to also address, which is to do with harmonic distortion. And maybe you guys want to talk about this as well. That you can't EQ out of a design has a bigger impact to perception than anyone is giving it credit for. What do you guys think about this?
Definitely disagree.
Okay.
Just because it's literally never impacted my perception of an audio device unless that audio device is broken.
So I wanted to. It's convenient that we have oratory.
Yeah, oratory has done actual like
so he
involving it with his.
I've told the story before, but when he came to visit us in Vancouver a while ago, he brought with him an IEM that had somewhere on the order of like 10% harmonic distortion, and you couldn't even hear it. I'm not sure if you remember what that one was, but yeah, you
10% at like low volumes, or is it like 10% only when you crank it?
Now that I don't actually know. He just said 10%.
Question.
But to me, is 6 to 10% at 6 kilohertz. Yes, he says. At what
volumes?
At what SPH?
I was the mega play.
Yeah. Even at low levels. Yeah. So it is something where I don't think it's fair to say that like across the board it should be treated equally, because if you're dealing with high order products, then they are more likely to be audible, right? Which is why for me, I'm not willing to attribute BA timbre to, like I'm not really willing to rule out harmonic distortion as being a potential, reason for that, because we are talking about elevated fifth.
Yeah.
And like oftentimes though it is
in an area we're sensitive to.
Yeah, and oftentimes it is actually still quite low. Like we're talking about like 1%, 2%. So I mean, that's where like the other part of my brain is like, does that really matter?
Sure.
But
I mean, I think it's a good idea to not completely rule it out.
Yeah.
But Mark asks, when you say you couldn't hear it, what exactly could you not hear? What did you expect to hear that wasn't there? I mean, distortion has a sound.
Yeah,
which
it's
is
really
additional harmonics added.
Yeah.
And
I would say it's pretty.
I'm just familiar with that sound because I've like played electric guitar for
but
long time.
A
I've
really
made
easy way to
music
tell
using distortion.
is piano tones. Piano tones are a really easy way to tell. If you're listening to music that has piano tones, if there is harmonic distortion there, it sounds like when you're playing test tones. Well, depending on the order, of course.
Got it. I usually find like more harmonically simple things to be a better test for that. There are a lot of like very simple synthesizer sounds that are like just based on sine waves. Basically, I mean, obviously, all music, in terms of our understanding through FFT, is built on sine waves. But like there are synthesizer patches that are just sine waves out there. There's this song by the Cardigans called Happy Meal 2, which opens with a synth electric piano sound like that, where it's very harmonically simple.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good test for harmonic distortion.
Yeah, I think that
just because there's not a lot of frequency content, so when there is anything additional.
So just because I always do this bit, I want to note it's not harmonic distortion if you have more than one tone.
Right, it's IMD.
Yeah.
Right.
That's because harmonic distortion is not a parameter of a system, it's a behavior of a system that has nonlinearity when you input a single frequency input.
Right.
Anything else you're technically getting intermodulation distortion, even if you're mostly one primary frequency, in which case you'll mostly get something that is a series of harmonics of that.
Yeah.
Good clarification.
I do think people, I mean, to get back to the macro level of this conversation, I do think people harmonic distortion, or just THD, for example, is a misinterpreted metric as well. When it comes to headphones, what do you guys think? I mean, we had this debate about the HD 650s and 6XXs and stuff like that. Do you guys, and actually I'm curious what Oratory thinks about this as well. Is there a particular threshold where you think it matters?
In terms of distortion?
Yeah.
I mean,
wasn't there a study that showed that IMD was a lot, like you required a lot higher of an IMD value before you got into like subjective, like people actually subjectively thinking that it was terrible?
So the thing about IMD is, Andrew's right. I do need to make this video, but we're going to do a video about transfer functions and how nonlinearity actually works.
Boring.
Shut up. You're a nerd. Anyway,
we can make it interesting, okay?
We absolutely cannot.
I don't trust that.
We absolutely cannot make it interesting. Anyway, so IMD is just what happens when you put a multi-tone signal through a system that is nonlinear, right? It's just that the output you get is changed based on the nonlinear transfer function of your device. If it's a linear transfer function, you only get the frequencies that you put in because you're getting the same waveform, just with, for example, the phase changed or the magnitude changed. But in this case, you're actually distorting the waveform in a nonlinear fashion, which is to say it's relative to the input level. Anyway, the reason IMD is harder to hear, quote unquote, is because of the masking effect. Right, like that's the thing, and it can be much easier to hear too. Like if you do the classic test I tell people to do is play a 20 kilohertz and a 19 kilohertz tone. The first order difference frequency product of that is 1 kilohertz. You will hear it super easy because neither of those frequencies will mask it at all. But comparatively, if you have, say, multi-tone IMD and it's doing the pipe organ thing, then you have a lot of content in basically every critical band, and so it's very hard to hear, like low distortion. This is also why high order distortion tends to be more audible, because higher order products are tautologically further away from the frequencies that they're like the H1 from the first harmonic.
Sorry, I just Ben, it's not spicy hour yet.
Should save that for spicy hour.
Yeah,
that'll be a good point of discussion.
Yeah.
So, on the question there is how, like, for the distortion audibility, it really does depend heavily on the stimulus you use and the order of the distortion.
Like, I mean, we were just sort of saying that as well earlier. But what about we tested different volume levels to get a more thorough read of distortion behavior as it changes with level, right? What do you think about the merits of basically, like, say we ordinarily listen around 85 dB, but that doesn't mean that the peaks aren't at 85 dB.
Yeah, I mean, well, if you're listening on a streaming service, then that would mean the peaks are on the order of 100 to 103
Sure.
dB.
At that level, is there basically at what point should we start caring about harmonic distortion at those volumes?
Well, the question is of what order and with what music, because the thing is
second and third typically, right? Because a lot of the time,
if it's low order, I mean, Constantine said they couldn't the people were not differentiating in his studies under 1%. For low order stuff specifically, I would probably say I wouldn't personally be worried about it 1%, 3% area. Like, that's
below 2% at 114 dB for second and thirds.
To be fair, the Susvara, because the Susvara is a modal headphone, and because its distortion peaks are at modal resonances, and because those resonances are basically a product of the diaphragm not moving uniformly, they do vary between devices, and in some cases they can be quite high order. Like, I have had Ananda.
Yeah, you can. I plotted them as well. Did I send you the?
I know, but what I'm saying for that unit, I had an Ananda. The Ananda normally doesn't have audible distortion, right? But I had an Ananda that had one. One of its drivers had a mode was sufficient, that was quite audible in music.
Yeah.
And it's a problem of undamped modal behavior in headphones. Like, it's something that I think is a legitimate design flaw. I understand a lot of where Headphone is coming from on the Susvara, and I really am impressed with its low frequency performance, but I wish that it was more. I wish that I could be fully confident that every. What?
We'll get to that.
Okay, I wish I could be fully confident that every Susvara was going to not have audible distortion at reasonable levels.
Yeah. So mine definitely does not. Or this one here. It does, the Office one. It's not mine. I don't own it. But I was kind of surprised by that, because when I think of like planars that perform really well for harmonic distortion, Headphone is not the one that comes to mind. It's usually like Odyssey and actually, I mean, I've come across a bunch of different planars that have performed really well for harmonic distortion. But you know, I'm sort of in the same boat as you, Blaine, there, where I have tested actually some of the Eggy Mans that have had higher harmonic distortion. You know, that I've come across. It's just that I think for a lot of people, it's very difficult to understand what matters and what doesn't, right? And oftentimes things are.
Clearly, they don't know that nothing really matters.
Anyone can see. But when it comes to this stuff, often things are judged, I think, erroneously, because it is a complicated thing. And this kind of gets back to the very first topic, which is, I mean, I suppose the supervening thing is that, like, we have these metrics that we all are sort of publishing and you know, including in our sort of analysis of a given product. At a certain point, it becomes very difficult to expect people to be able to actually understand this in a way that's sufficient for them to be able to judge it for themselves. Like, they need to have the guide for some of this stuff. Anyway, it's just sort of my.
That's why people like sign it, because it's just one number that
I know,
that
but
explains everything for them. But somehow,
it's a nice. There's got to be a term for this. Hey, Joel's here. You're impressed with Andrew's ability to speak with IEMs.
I mean, it's true. The occlusion effect fucks me up there.
Yeah. You just got to get used to it. Skill issue.
Got him.
Yeah. But I mean, there are things like that in other areas too, where it's like, here's a convenient index of something that isn't necessarily all that relevant to the way that people are going to, you know, use it.
Megapixels. We already did this bit like 2 streams ago.
Yes.
We literally did this bit.
Yeah. So anyways, there's this. Have you heard?
Okay, we should talk about that. And that is on the list.
So I am not able to.
What is that? Like, I'm out of the loop.
All right. So there's a it's been announced that there's a Susvara sequel update.
Right.
Unveiled.
The Susvara 2.
Unveiled, it's called.
Yes, official name, Susvara 2.
Yeah.
Right.
Now I'm not allowed to give impressions on this for 2 reasons. I don't think the embargo is technically lifted on impressions.
Bye, Constantine.
Bye, Constantine.
We love you.
Goodbye.
But also, I don't think that this is not a production unit, so I'm not going to give sound impressions of that. But we can talk about the design itself, because that's public. And basically, what they've done is they've presented the user with a purely naked driver. Unless they change this with production units, but I have no indication that they will.
I doubt they'll change it.
I don't think, yeah. I
would be very surprised.
Again, this is not, I do not treat this as a production unit, so I don't know. But I'm thinking, like, why would they give you the covers if not for the fact that it's a naked driver completely exposed to the world on the outside, right?
Well, so you can make it into a closed back.
Oh no, it does. They're magnetically.
No.
Do you see the measurement of the? Yeah. Anyway.
Please no.
I haven't seen the measurement of them.
It's hilarious. Yeah, no. But yeah. So basically, my concern is that this is the fastest way for a headphone to get damaged that I've yet seen, because you know, like having worked with planars, Blaine knows this, of course. You know, things. Well, there's 2 things. One is the ease at which things can get yeeted through the diaphragm is you know, with a purely naked driver there to the world. If you just have like loose screws kicking around, I mean, this has happened to us. We've multiple times this has happened. But even for people who don't have, you know, DIY projects kicking around, like you can just accidentally touch the diaphragm, the membrane. If you put your hands on to take the headphones off, you could accidentally just like touch it. And even just something as simple as that can, you know, damage or, you know, puncture a membrane. These are extremely
and it's
fragile.
notable that you don't have to puncture a diaphragm to change how it behaves.
Yeah. And we've seen this as well with a lot of the stuff that, you know, we've done. Like even just slightly different tensioning can completely, you know, ripple the fuck out of the diaphragm, and then that changes its sonic characteristics.
The modes.
Yeah.
The modes.
Yeah. And so I want to get your guys' take on this, right? Which is like supposedly this is sound quality at all costs. One of them being the expense, the other being the inconvenience of having to clamp or clasp
the bit here is the old boomer comic, which says the thing that really attracted me to vinyl was the expense and inconvenience.
Yeah,
Yes.
I say the same thing about my philosophy degree.
That's why I think this design actually makes sense for the target audience of the Susvara, who is like, you know, generally going to trend a little bit older, because older people actually have $8,000 to spend on headphones.
What is the Maxwell critical diaphragm vibes? Did you do a Maxwell?
Crinkle. No,
Crinkle,
the
crinkle.
crinkle.
Oh, crinkle.
Oh,
Actual crinkle, not just a misspelling of critical. That's funny that happened though. But yeah, so the people that can spend $8,000 on a headphone that are, you know, generally tweaking their chain of like amp and DAC for, you know, not esoteric, kind of, again, higher ticket options. I think it makes sense to add something like the Unveiled, where, like, you know, maybe you're not adding some sort of measurable benefit, but you're adding to the ritual of listening to your headphone in a way that makes it feel more experientially premium or something.
An
like
added
that.
sense of anxiety about every time you touch it.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah,
if
I mean,
someone has
vinyl
hair
is
like
the same way.
yours, Griffin,
Tubes are the same way.
if someone has hair like yours, that's going to damage the diaphragm. It's just gonna like cascade.
I have a question for Blaine, I guess. I just thought of this. Why aren't we doing surrounds for planars?
He tried.
Oh, fun fact. I actually talked at some length with a manufacturer about specifically requesting that.
That sounds interesting.
Made a diaphragm out of condom.
Okay, so that is true, but that's not the subject. That's not the substantive point here. So there's a few reasons. One, obviously, is that the marginal, like, in general, planar manufacturers assume that we are going to be making them without surrounds, right? So the majority of it is working with thin films that are flexible enough to be their own surrounds, right? And that are thin and flexible enough. So you don't see a lot of manufacturers investing in being able to process like highly stiff, highly light planars. You could make a planar with like a, I don't know, a graphene or like a other hyper stiff diaphragm that had a surround, but you would actually need to invest in the production of that. And that's not a huge market. Planars aren't big to begin with. And while it could theoretically give you some meaningful improvements, the driver would be less modal while also allowing you to have a very low resonance frequency because of the high compliance. The difficulty of making an exceptionally thin, exceptionally light surround and then attaching it to your extremely thin diaphragm, which also has to have a flat circuit attached to it. And also you have to have some way of getting those contacts off of that flat circuit. So some part of it, either there needs to be bond wires, which you can do, or there has to be some part of it going over the surround, which is, okay, great, now you have three-dimensional flat printing, which is doable. Again, all this is possible. But the majority of the manufacturers I've talked to haven't really been interested in it because from their point of view, they can already get good results with planars.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of work and cost.
It would probably come with other benefits like making them smaller, you know, like smaller, lighter, something along the lines. And then if you wanted to, you know,
well, I mean, there's only so small you can make a planar.
Right. I'm just saying, like, if you wanted to achieve a similarly low resonance frequency as you get with other ones. Like,
Well,
what
but
if
the
you?
problem with the planar is that you can't just make them super small with a super low resonance frequency because those go
Yes,
slap into the magnets.
that's.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. That's true.
So that's
So,
and
what
that's
you're
the
saying is just abandon planar and just return to dynamic.
But think
well,
of the
no, I
burn-in
mean,
memes.
no, I mean there's like this is something that I would actually be super intrigued to work on. But you would
Money.
like yeah, it's basically the manufacturing costs are not insubstantial here, and while you could almost certainly make a better headphone or speaker driver with it, how much better is not necessarily clear, and there would also be issues like, surrounds decay at a different rate than the diaphragms, and the adhesives that connect them have meaningful moving mass and have meaningful life cycle. So I would really love to see it done. I have literally tried to commission that from multiple different companies, and they have generally been uninterested. Or the things they basically said would have been, it basically would have been a flat dynamic driver because it would have been so high mass that it would not really be planar magnetic, even though it would actually have had it would just have been all the downsides of all of them together, really.
Mhm. Yeah. If my memory serves correctly, this path led to coming up with a PU-based diaphragm of sorts when we were doing that development.
Yes.
And
well, I mean that's one of them.
Yeah, it wasn't that concept, but it led to testing this.
Yeah, I mean, well, the question there was trying to find something that was
Mhm.
more that had a high compliance,
Yeah.
but also that was workable for this. Obviously, it's
that one, if I remember correctly, it just didn't work for high frequency that well.
well, that one was just very massive.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, right? Like finding something that is finding that golden balance of an extremely stiff material for the driver, for the piston, an extremely compliant material for the surround, both of them extremely light. It's a materials problem.
But we did have a Goldilocks zone diaphragm that somebody punctured, a la something that I imagine is going to happen once this thing comes out.
Comes all back to the topic at hand. Yeah.
Yeah. But actually, interestingly, about the one that got punctured, if I remember correctly, that one also had a very low resonance frequency, but it was I'm not sure if it was that one or the one before, but there was one that had a max SPL that was a little bit too low for comfort, or like low in amplitude for comfort.
Well, yeah, and the thing is that a high Q resonance in the bass will inevitably limit max SPL, and that's
so with
the
damping
problem.
It would be solvable, right?
Yeah, well, or if you made the gap bigger, right, the magnet gap, but then you lose sensitivity. Like in all these things, there is a solution. It's just there's trade-offs inherent to the construction, and it's true of any driver. That's why making a good driver is hard.
Yep.
And why a good driver for one project isn't necessarily good for another.
And expensive.
Well, there's that too.
Yeah. So that's the real inconvenience and expense. Yeah, I don't know. Any other thoughts on the Susvara unveiled for you guys?
No, I just think it makes more sense than the discourse gave credit for. Not in terms of like making sense as like something that is going to make the product inherently better for anyone that picks it up. But I think for its actual customer, it might increase the appeal.
I
both
hate...
of like the purchase and like the experience once they actually have it.
No, like when we were in Munich High End, we did get to try it there. Some people tried it next to the regular Susvara, and they did prefer it over the regular Susvara. I didn't do that A/B comparison. I just listened to the new one.
Yeah, and we're not talking about your impressions.
Yeah, but when it was there, they said, "Oh, we might put some cover on it." So I was like, "Oh, thank goodness." There's gonna, because it's like a naked driver. They're gonna put some sort of cover.
So you thought they meant a grill?
I thought they meant a grill, and I didn't, or a mesh or something, right? I didn't realize they meant literally these magnet things that slap on the sides. So,
I like that. I mean, like, it's dumb. I have the same opinion as Joel here. I think it's dumb, but it's funny.
Yeah. It is quite funny. When I grabbed it from the office, I was in fits of laughter because I was like, what the hell?
Corinne,
yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on it?
When it comes to headphones nowadays, I'm just like not keeping up as much. Like the Susvara is at the end of the day a huge meme. As much as I like it, I know it's a meme. So the Susvara unveiled is just a meme on top of a meme. And I don't know, when it comes to Singaporean shores, I'll try it out and then I'll let you guys know. But I don't think I don't think I'll have any like hard opinions on headphones nowadays. I'm actually more interested in speakers than headphones.
Can we get a dusk unveiled at some point? Just take
Dusk
I'm
unveiled.
trying.
Here's the real question.
I'm trying.
Crane, if
When
you
are
could
we
ever do an
getting
open back
twin
IM, I would love
speakers?
that.
An open back IM.
Wait, why would you love that?
That exists though.
I,
There are
I
lots.
I actually think they're underrated. I had time with an LCD i3 at home, and obviously
I'll tell you this one thing. My favorite open back IEM that that's not really IE is the KSE 75.
based. Good take.
The KC75 is the best earbud.
It is. So to me, it's like, well, I can't beat that unless I go into ear speaker territory, which is something that I've discussed with Blaine over the years.
I also
like-
want to do that.
Eventually, I don't know. I'm more focusing on like trying to make my own IEMs now. So
Like,
that's like,
if you did want to get into ear speaker territory, like there, you could price it at whatever you wanted, and there is such a market for this. You know,
Mhm.
it's true. Yeah, but I'm actually more interested. Like I had dabbled in doing the whole ear speaker thing for like the last 5 years, but recently I've just kind of accepted that no one wants to do this with me, and more people are actually more interested in helping me make a speaker instead. So I'm more focusing on like, at least in terms of this, like, the high end space. I rather go into speakers now.
You should work
Not
with
that I would
those new Korean guys for a speaker.
those look good.
Oh,
passive
those
ones?
look
Maybe-
so good.
maybe
We should talk about
maybe
those.
we aren't.
The
Which
what?
ones?
ASCII Lab.
Yeah, ASCII Lab.
Yeah.
Those
Oh,
things
yeah,
look
interesting.
sick.
Yeah.
And I
But
feel like
what
the
I
more I
want
looked
to
at
do-
it, the more I realized how good they are.
Yeah, the
They don't
new
need
Korean
help.
guys don't need help.
They just
But what I
do
want
nothing.
to do,
Just put a waifu on it and done.
but what I want to do is actually to make like a competitor to the iLab Micros. I love those things, but I feel like, first of all, they're very expensive, and that kind of quality with that kind of size, I want to replicate it as well. It's
Yeah,
not
it'd
sure
be
how,
tough.
but that's like, but speakers are like number 7 or number 8 on my project's priority list at this point.
Valid.
All right, spicy hour time. Should we do spicy hour?
Yeah, sure.
I think we're ready. All right, chat. Do your worst or best. Let's see some peppers. I haven't seen any yet. So
What hot, spicy takes that do you have for us? Give us your trashiest takes.
do you have any? While we're getting that, do you have any spicy takes, Chronicle?
I have any spicy takes? I do, but it's more in the context of like the general community rather than with you guys. It's like that, oh no, a burden doesn't exist. It's like,
That's
okay.
not. Yeah, you're right. That's not spicy for us.
Yeah, it's like within our little isolated echo chamber, it's like, yeah, who gives a shit?
Actually, what did you guys think of? Did you?
Oh wait,
guys...
I have a hot take.
Okay, go ahead.
Anechoic chambers are basically outmoded.
Basically,
Okay.
what?
They're
you talking-
basically archaic. We don't need them anymore.
Just because of gating.
Because like, try making a really actually anechoic space. It's so much harder than just getting a crane and a robot.
Oh,
Yeah,
the
making
horrors
2024, yeah.
says, is there a way I could learn more about the work in progress target compensation curve that's featured on Listener's Squig? Yes, there's an article. I believe linked in the description here that talks about. Wait, does it talk about? No, that's the diffuse field article.
He's talking about my preference target, which
Oh,
I could just disclose what it is.
okay.
It is an 8 dB downward slope with a 4 dB base shelf and a
Niels.
2.5 decibel reduction at 3 kilohertz. And the baseline
What's
it uses,
the base target though?
The baseline it uses is ISO 11904.
1. Yeah, so
Now,
we know
I tested it on IEMs. What I have at home, but I've tested it on headphones. I'm not going to say it will work for 5128 measurements of headphones. However, the filter set, the 4 dB bass, the 8 dB slope, and the 2.5 dB ear gain cut.
Affectionately known as...
Give it a try on your DF of choice for the rig you're using for
Yeah.
headphones.
Target is affectionately known as the warm poo target.
Guys, we found the hottest take, and it wasn't even marked with a pepper.
What was it?
Okay.
Just go outside. Open field flat speaker listening should be the reference. IDKY Harmon chooses room listening as the ideal listening experience.
Oh yeah, that is.
There we have it. The hottest take of the stream already.
Take, yeah.
I'm joking about that being the warm poo target, by the way.
I mean, it's
just giving
warm.
listener crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of gets into that. It reminds me of when I was first ordering a Gross, and I was having all kinds of conversations with a gentleman who was using them to go outside and take measurements of nature sounds. Binaural nature sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, recordings, not measurements.
Yeah, recordings. But I don't think that's what this person means. I think it means like actually measure. And
well, yeah, no, he's saying that he wants free field. Ironically, like that means that this is someone who has gone back in time to the world of free field, which is always an interesting one. And I think it arises from the misconception that you want to have the minimum additions to the sound relative to what's on the recording.
Yeah.
Actually listening this way should fairly quickly disabuse you of the notion that it sounds good.
Yeah, listening in dead rooms is not fun.
Listening in dead rooms is not fun. Listening to a speaker, like a flat on-axis speaker, looking at it in the middle of an open field, which I have done, it's not really that good.
Yeah.
Would Critical work with Resolve to make perfect IEM? Doesn't need to. It exists.
What is perfect IEM? I
It's
guess the perfecter IEM.
Yeah,
the more perfecter IEM now
just
would
fucking
be just that, but analog.
But analog.
Hold on,
exactly.
Joel says we found a use for anechoic chambers, teaching people that free field is dumb.
Bass tape.
All right, let's see. Capra.
I come from live sound. We can tell you come from live sound, Dranek.
Capra. I want to read Capra's here with Peppers. With the concept of brain burn-in, can we really call any headphones that aren't too far off bad if you can Stockholm yourself into liking it?
Yes, we can.
Yes, yeah. So that was the problem with like pre-graphs audiophile hobby, where everyone would just be like, well, if you listen to it for like 20 to 50 hours afterwards, then you would kind of like it. And it's like, yeah, but that would apply to everything on the market. So you could like everything on the market.
I don't know. Like people talk about, brain burn-in as being such like a compelling thing. And obviously it is when you're listening to the product, but like whenever you stop listening to it, does your brain not just readjust to the way things sound normally? And then every time you start listening again, you're back to this like, oh, okay, I got to adjust again. Or is it like,
I don't think the adjustment period takes that long.
Well, I heard two voices at once. Sorry, what was that?
Go ahead, Blake.
How do I turn this camera into 1080p so it stops overheating?
It's in the menus.
Where in the menus, you mother? There's so many menus.
Yeah, and that menu system is horrible. It's
Fine,
in
I'll be back.
I don't know off the top of my head. It's in the video section there for it could be file format. I don't know. Sorry, what was the commentary on brain burn and renormalization?
Oh, I just think the adjustment period is actually very fast. Like such that for people who rely on it to enjoy something, it's not actually that big of an impediment.
But then what is the value in spending 50 hours or however many hours people say with the thing if the sort of elasticity of brain burn-in is quick? I think it's more just that it's like people living with it, and then they develop some sort of positive attachment to the thing, right?
Yeah,
'Cause it's
maybe.
their window into music being good, potentially.
Well, I think over time, the aspects that aren't sound also become more important. Like comfort is
Certainly.
more important over like 2 to 3 hours versus like
Yeah.
first 10 minutes wearing it. So maybe, it doesn't sound great, but they adjust to it, and then, 3 hours later they're still listening and enjoying themselves, and they don't feel pain in their ears.
Yeah.
It's a positive experience.
Zello says, if technicalities are all FR, why are we unable to EQ technicalities? We are. Oh, Joel
We
said
are.
that. Yeah, we are. Yeah. There are certain things where it's difficult. I will say that, right? Like the
Definitely.
filters, especially if you're using a graph, sometimes that can be, especially with high acoustic Z stuff, or stuff that has pads such that they might deform differently, or like if there's a meaningful variation between how something measures on the hats versus how it would be at your eardrum, then it can be very challenging to identify.
Which is
what
basically
things are.
always the case, by the way.
Yeah.
Like,
But say, like, actually, this as far as a good example of a reasonably low acoustic Z headphone, and it does track a little bit more closely than actually even the closed-back Focal, the Hedanus. No, sorry, the Azuris, for example, or like some of the DCAs that have the big pads. It's like those don't seem to track quite the same way, I find. Yeah, I mean, I understand the concern, but I think that in and of itself is, maybe this goes back to skill issues a little bit. What do you think, Critical?
It is, I mean, kind of in some ways. Okay, so EQ is great for a fixed position. I just call it fixed position changes to the FR. But the problem with that is that your ear canals introduce resonances, your head introduces resonances, and what would have been fixed for your head would be completely different in different individuals. So when I tune, so when we make IAMs, the problem is that we could have, you would also know this, like we could have a 6K peak here, we could have a more likely 10K plus, where it's like 12K peak here. And if you try to EQ it out based on a 711 measurements, for example, it would work for the 711 coupler, but then as you would know, it will be different on a 5128, it will be different on a human ear. So for that, you would still have to do some level of tuning on the driver's side completely. So the idea of like, you can just EQ everything is kind of wrong in that regard, because you can't EQ out your own HRTF on a very specific scale.
And also to do with the shell ergonomics itself, and that the impact that has on air volume and length mode and all this stuff. So, and it's funny because I was trying to do this with I get what you're saying, Kryn. Like, it all goes back to what we talk about, how like FR at the eardrum is something where we can't be sure of it, and because of that, we can't get two products to perfectly be identical at the eardrum, or like it would be extremely difficult to get two products with different designs to be perfectly identical at the eardrum.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, it's like, oh, go ahead.
So I was just gonna say that when you EQ out stuff like this, where you have like peaks and dips and all that, the problem is that if you're gonna EQ in technicalities, is kind of the idea is there, where it's like, all right, we kind of just need to boost up the upper frequencies. But the problem with that also is that the upper frequencies is so dependent on one's HRTF, as well as how the drivers match up out of the nozzle, like not just between the nozzle and the eardrum, but between the nozzle and the drivers, that affect all of these so differently. So EQing in technicality sounds like a very easy thing, but it requires so much, to the point where it's just like, well, in the end, we still have to design a really, really good IEM or really, really good headphone. So, and that would say that a lot of money. Yeah,
I would say that you did it though with the Dusk and the Dusk default DSP, where the things that people would have referred to as technicalities along certain dimensions are improved when going to the default DSP preset from the original, from the analog mode. And like something as simple as like the spaciousness effect, given the changes to the mid-range, this is one of the areas where it sounds more distinct as a result of that EQ. So I think, like, yes, in the finest grained sense of detail and resolution and some of these terms that we use to describe the finer points of technicalities, it does become challenging given the myriad of potential problem areas in the treble on an individual person-to-person basis, and the relationship with the IEM and everything to do with it, basically. But I do think on the most coarse-grained side of things, the most basic and bluntest instrument of EQing technicalities, that being the spaciousness effect, it's pretty obvious. I think that is the signal, right, for that you can do this to a certain extent. And even though, I would say it's hard, I think people should still try.
I think the issue is also that there's like, no matter what move you make with EQ, there are going to be compromises you're making between either two technical metrics like soundstage and, say, dynamics, resolution, whatever, or like the whole technicalities versus tone. Like, for your example, between the two different configurations of the Dusk, being the analog and the default, like I totally agree that the default has a more
sorry, you're roboting out a little bit. Are you downloading something, or?
Oh no, I literally, Discord is the only application open on my screen. I just have a bad computer.
Okay.
Behold, I have a new UI. I can't.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Sorry.
Anyway, but what you might get in soundstage, you might, for example, lose in bass texture or bass dynamic. Like I know that, to me,
timbre.
There were moments when, or timbre. Like there are moments when, with the analog mode, I did find that the bass was snappier, more like impactful, had more, on synth basses in particular, had more emphasis on like the textural grit and overtones of things. Now I think that was at the cost of things like soundstage or timbre, but I could definitely see a person who weights those things higher than soundstage or timbre saying that it's just all around better.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned it, though, because I mean, like, this is a subject where, like, I will basically continue to talk about these things in terms of FR, the eardrum, because that's what I've learned to be true, with, especially, diving into EQ and doing, the most personalization. But I do find, like, people talk about, like, actually maybe Critical, if you want to weigh in on this as well, but, IEMs like the Megafest, I do hear when people say, oh, it's not as technical as something else, right? Like, I do hear that, and it's not something that's easy to just, blankly fix, or not fix, but it's not easy to basically make them equivalent in that respect. Like, I would actually say Dusk default DSP, when running it in analog mode with the default DSP filters, I do think sounds more technical than the Megafest.
I have a theory, because I do, okay, this kind, it's kind of like agreeing with you, but I think that's kind of shit talking a competitor, which is not right. But I do agree with you, and I do have a theory, and that is more to do with the Sonian ESTs, where the text, I think this is a whole like bass moment thing where I'm like, the Sonian ESTs just sound very, to use subjective terms, it sounds poofy. It doesn't sound like there's no sharpness in the treble, even though the treble's supposed to be sharp, if that makes sense.
So I don't know.
So that is what contributes to that sense of like, oh, this has less resolution than I expected it to have.
Do you hear? Okay, so I hear it more like the attack is very fast, but there's no sustain, if that makes sense. Like it sounds like.
But no sustain would kind of make it sound technical, wouldn't it? It's
Well,
like,
that's
it sounds
why
really
I think
fun.
actually.
That's like the E-stat sound, if you get what I mean.
But that's
Yeah.
why I think for some people it might sound actually better if they would prefer that, right? And like maybe you and I would call it blunted somehow, or like something is like not
Yes.
resolving.
The question
in
is
that
technical in
traditional
what
sense.
way? Like resolving in the way it's typically used, something
Yeah.
being extra thin like that without the sense of sustain or decay.
Yeah, that's what it.
Could fit that description.
Yeah.
But I think what a lot of people talk about with Mega 5 specifically is the sort of bluntedness that Andrew's talking about, which on the face
I
of the
wouldn't correlate that. Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
I'm not saying like universally this is like poor technicalities because I actually think that there are people who are going to prefer that kind of sound or whatever we're identifying here. But it does sound, decidedly different from other IEMs that, if equalized to be similar, I've tried to equalize them to be the same. They still sound different in that sense. So technically different. And to me, I chalk this up, at least in part, to the fact that the nozzle itself, it's actually kind of on the large side, so I'm not able to fully insert it into my ear as far as maybe I can with other IEMs. Like even the dusk, I can insert further.
The nozzles are kind of like short and stubby as well for the mega.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
But like with that said, like if I'm thinking of like analog only IEM, it's one of the best ones that I can think of for its overall wideband, So so yeah, make an analog dusk default DSP.
By all accounts, it looks like he's working on it.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Joel says you guys should not expect to have the same subjective impressions of IEMs. We shouldn't, actually. That's a fair point.
He said, keep it with cold take faces.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. But actually, Crinical's gone.
We lost Crin.
Yeah, he didn't.
He's dead.
He didn't like that. Here is I don't know if this is a hot take or a cold take, but I feel like one thing that'd be interesting to study for some science to look into is how like we have the different listener classes and then they're associated with like this group is so class 1 is like most people, class 2 is like psychopaths, and you know what I mean, right? Like there's different, it's younger men usually, like who love the extra bass or whatever.
You can just say Terran. It's fine.
It's Terran. Class 3 is like women and Blaine and old people. What I'm wondering is if there are certain physiological characteristics about different types of listeners that we might be able to associate with different preference groups as well. So
there's
an
different
example,
anatomical features that we could consistently tie to a preference.
And an example of this, I was originally thinking of this in terms of, well, if you look at the 5128, the ear for it is smaller than that of the Gross, right? And the Gross's ear is actually more similar in size to my ear. And if you look at the ear gain effects, well, they track differently between the two. The 5128 seemingly are a bit brighter in a more treble focused region, whereas the Gross pinna seems to be brighter in the primary ear gain region. Some of these things, right? And I'm wondering if there's a way to sort of observe trends for listeners around that. And then it got me thinking to do with IEMs, where, okay, the phrasing of this probably matters, but literally nothing about me is small. I'm a very large human. And I'm wondering if, so like large features, large head, large ear canal probably, and for smaller heads, smaller ear canals, different air volumes. Are we able to correlate preferences for different types of sound signatures around or with, groupings of head size or ear shape or ear size, these types of things? And then we'd be able to predict for people. It's especially with IEMs because I feel like this is one of the more challenging things.
Well, it's a problem with headphones too.
But
and it's a problem that definitely has not been addressed by any of the literature out there.
Yeah.
Like, we know generally what.
Oh, Joel
people
says there are
prefer.
papers written on this. I'd love to know which ones, if you have a citation.
There are papers written in terms of how these features relate to preference, or in terms of how the features correlate to measured response.
I don't remember this from Hammershine and Mahler, is what I'm saying.
No. Well, there is a good piece that was published in Audio Express magazine in April by one of the people who worked on the 5128, and then I think another 2 engineers to work at one of the big 3 companies. And they were specifically identifying factors of the ear canal that would lead to variation in measured response. And the 2 major things they were able to account for and show a difference in were the radius of the ear canal, so how large or I guess small in circumference the cylinder is, and the length. Now, obviously, none of this accounts for eardrum, but those are 2 factors you were talking about.
Well, I mean, in that sense,
just
it is
me saying, bruh.
What?
I think he's still having camera issues.
Okay.
Yes, no, the camera. I've given up.
Okay.
That's okay.
We'll fix it for the next one.
I'll fix it in post.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not suggesting there's necessarily a correlation between, large-headedness and large ear canaledness, but I wonder if there's a sort of larger type of clustering that one could do that would be more helpful for predicting, certain preferences, right, based on anatomical features. So we can say, well, I am of this type, right, of person, therefore I'm more likely to be into this kind of sound profile.
Right. But that's the thing, because we haven't gotten good research based on head response for any of these devices generally.
Yeah.
We don't really know.
Yeah. How tall is Resolve? I'm 6'1". I think Critical, you're also around that, right?
I think Cream's a little taller.
6 flat.
6 flat? Okay.
Really?
I'm
I feel like
183 cm.
I feel like you were way taller than me, and I'm 6 foot.
He's just got
I
big boy
probably
energy.
was hungry. Yeah. Yeah, Kryn does have big boy energy, and Kryn is also way taller than I would have expected.
Yeah, everyone says that the camera removes 5 inches.
Yeah.
From where?
All right.
Hey, Critical and I are of similar size and shape and build, and we have similar preferences. Therefore, it must mean that there is something to our general largesse.
Or HRTS with twins.
Exactly.
I mean, now that you mention it, you guys do have similar preferences.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of study I would love to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joel also says you're taller than him, Kryn, and he's just above 6 foot, so you don't want to measure yourself again.
Am I? No way. Yeah, I just haven't had myself measured in a while. But there's no way I would get a growth spurt at my old age.
Yeah. But so I sort of, just to get back on that, I intuitively wonder, and I have nothing to back this up, but I wonder if the subjects in the Harman IE study, if they're just small people. I think the class of when the 2024 preliminary stuff where it's this is it was clear okay, there's the group that prefers less ear gain and then there's the Harman group, right? And it was well, maybe the Harman group are just small. They're small heads, small ear canals.
a shorter and smaller ear canal would, if I remember correctly, I mean, obviously it would shift the length mode higher, introducing kind of a valley in that 6K area.
Yeah, and that's precisely where it's 5. It's not just 6K, but it's 5, 6.
No, yeah, it's a wide band, 3 to 7K hertz.
Yeah, and so it's exactly there where you have people where for me it's particularly intolerable because in most cases that's where my length mode resonance is, right around 6.
Right.
And I just have to assume that it's not there for the people who prefer that kind of sound.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a problem with it, which again is we know the response in the rig we don't
Yeah.
know the actual in situ response. So any judgments we could make about why we like something is, I mean, it has to be on an individual basis, which is fine. Like if you're a reviewer, you should be, testing stuff like that. You should be listening with pink noise to see, if a preferred or if a certain EQ point is making it more or less preferable to you, or compare it to other IEMs that have different features in different areas.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm gonna call on Blaine to weigh in on this overall question.
Do I?
What are your thoughts on the idea of trying to identify like common anatomical features among listeners and then correlating them with preference groups?
Oh, I don't think. I mean, like, you mean the ones from the segmentation paper?
Well, no. So the segmentation paper, there were
Or do you mean
some
like just correlating them with preferences in like a new study?
Yeah, in a new study. Yeah, exactly. The attributions to those clusters in the segmentation paper is what made me think of this. But yeah, it would be a different study.
I mean, it would be hard. You would need, because okay, so let me clarify what I'm going to say. I would conjecture that the majority of the taste variation that we see is not due to anatomical variation.
It's just
That being the
preference
case,
variation.
yeah, that again, conjecture, don't have evidence to back this. It could be entirely anatomical variation, but that would kind of surprise me. That being the case, you have a really big nuisance variable there, in that people do have variable preferences, which is not necessarily correlated with their anatomy. So even if there is an effect of variable preferences that are correlated with anatomy,
Yeah,
you have to have a sufficiently large data set to actually see through that particular noise. And that makes it a bit of a problematic point.
I don't know. So like I'm in agreement with you that I don't think that that preference is uniquely attributed to anatomical features. I think it's if I had to say what the factor would be, it'd be like 70-30, right? Something like that. Certainly when it comes to lower frequency stuff, we know that there is a given amount of preference variation to begin with, and that's less impacted by features like ear canal length and pinna effects. So certainly that is a key consideration. But I do think that specifically when it comes to IEMs, as we've talked about many times before, we have situations where a common preference target or targets are categorically intolerable to a group of people. And that's where I think you could find reasonably, some sort of, so of the group that find Harman IE, for example, categorically intolerable, what is common to their anatomy, if there is something, and then is that correlated with, the outcome there? Because, like, obviously, yes, the nuisance variable could also indicate that, like, or could be the case that, for reasons that are just to do with preference and not anatomy whatsoever, someone could just not like extra 6K. But I have to imagine that at least among that group, there are those who find it intolerable because of their anatomy.
I guess my question to all of you would be, I guess, how much do you think the speaker research in terms of variability of preference accounts for the anatomically invariant, like, I guess, results, like because a speaker is interacting with your full anatomy, and we're not in a weird situation like headphones or REMs. It's not like the scenario of real life listening. Do you think that that the variation in speaker preference basically has to be kind of like a baseline that then you could build the anatomical variant parts of closely coupling devices on top of?
I almost think it's easier.
Because to me, that makes a bit of intuitive sense, just because when the HRTF and all of that stuff is accounted for, you still get that variation in preference in the speaker.
Well, yeah, and that's how you isolate the preference element, right? Because all the factors are included. That's why I actually think it's.
I don't know.
Well, yeah. I'm actually of the opinion that it would be easier to do with IEMs because of how strong the variation is in preference. Seemingly. And because of the assumed like pinna assumption, basically, which is a key anatomical feature.
I don't know if it would be easier to nail down just because the measurements are going to be so much harder.
That's true. That's true. Anyways, just something to think about. I didn't have really much there with that. It's been on my brain lately.
Yeah.
Bose immersive audio sounds way better than Apple's spatial audio. They also do tasteful Fletcher-Munson compensation and do a better job of reading and adjusting to your anatomy with custom tune. Is that a spicy take, or I don't understand if this is just...
I have no experience with the immersive audio or their Fletcher-Munson compensation.
Yeah.
Maya does seem to think that their custom tune is actually a novel implementation.
Oh, cool.
Same sort of in situ compensation that most of the large companies' true wireless flagships are using. I haven't read the patent, so I don't know exactly what it's doing up there.
I'm after this stream, I'm working on finishing that Sonos review, and
oh yeah,
good.
The Sonos Ace. Have you heard it?
No.
No.
But I do like Sonos speakers though. So, but I know how that doesn't translate into a headphone.
Yeah, no, they whiffed it on this one.
They botched it. Fuck. Okay.
It's not good. It's
That's disappointing. I really do like the speakers. And the interesting one is that the IKEA speakers, the one that's like IKEA X Sonos, that was really good actually.
Yeah.
Surprising.
No, this one I would say it's better than the XM4s, like the older
low bar. Okay.
Low bar. I would say it's better than the PX8, also really low bar.
Okay. Is it better than the N700?
No, and it's not. Oh wait, the Bose or AKG?
The AKG.
No,
the AKG ones.
No, definitely not. It's also not. It's just worse than the AirPods Max. Like it's got worse bass, bad mids, and worse treble.
Are there any bad true wireless headphones that I've tried? Actually, Bose Ultras were pretty okay.
Oh, like the wait, you're talking about the over ear or which one?
The over ear ones, yeah, the new ones.
I wanted to try the Ultras because I tried the new QC Quiet Comfort, right? The refresh of the QC35 basically, and it was bad. I mean, it had enough of a channel imbalance where it was like I can't even listen to this, and I had several units did that. So that's just part of the implementation. They're like, yep, fuck it, channel balance doesn't matter. But with the Ultra, I'm curious about that one. I have yet to try it.
Have either of you tried the Sony Altware?
No.
The one that like 20 dB bass shelf or something like that.
The one I'm curious about is the one that Blaine has. The what is it called?
The Bose Quiet Comfort, or no? Oh, I know. The one that's
the earring
fire. Yeah.
What is it called?
I think it's also Ultra.
It's something Ultra Open, maybe. But Blaine, enlighten us. What is it called? Blaine's just gone. I also have
the Bose Ultra Open.
Yeah, Ultra Open. Yeah. How are they?
The earring ones.
Yeah, are they good?
I mean, like from an objective standpoint, they're mediocre. I mean, like the mids are not utterly fucked. The treble is a little rough, and obviously there's no sub bass.
Mm-hmm. Would you say? I mean, I showed you the measurements of these, right? The shocks is. Oh no, sorry, not the Air. The regular open fit. Would you say it is better or worse than these?
I would guess slightly better.
Okay.
Admittedly, I don't think much of shocks. It's highly variable depending on where they sit in the ear, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Because they literally just sit at kind of a random point in the concha based on where you put them. So I think it'll be variable between listeners. For me, they sound perfectly tolerable. I wouldn't recommend them for critical listening, but just for listening to some tunes and getting some work done. I like them.
So they're bright as the sun and they have no bass. That's okay.
I would not say they're bright as the sun. They do have, at least for some positions, a meaningful treble spike, though.
Yeah, and no bass because how like that's
no bass below about 80 hertz.
It's not terrible. I mean, for that type of thing.
Yeah.
Makes.
And yet here
sense.
you are hating.
What's that? Here I am hating. It's what I do, man. I sit and I hate. No, not actually. I would love for there to be a good, like TWS in-ear that I could go to, take to the gym. Because
I mean, that's.
Oh wait, you're not on iOS, so you're.
Well,
so AirPods Pro 2.
No, my AirPods Pro 2 are my favorites, right? They're for sound quality. They're the ones that I like the best. But I do find that when I'm at the gym, they're not as secure as I would like. And I recently switched
that's fair, yeah.
to something else. I think one from Sennheiser, and it's just not good. Like it's like
yeah, they're terrible.
Yeah, they're bad for both the sound, but then they're also bad for like bodily noise when you're walking. The whole thing shakes. And
No, I mean you really can't have occluding headphones in my view while you're doing that stuff. That's why I like the earring thing.
Yeah, that's why I'm mentioning it, because it would be great if there's something that's like that would be great specifically for active purposes.
Well,
I think that for gym that they're more than
does
good
the same
enough.
thing.
Sorry, what's
that?
that?
What'd you say, Blaine?
I think that for the gym they're more than good enough sound quality wise.
Fair.
They're what I wear when I exercise.
You don't do critical listening at the gym?
I'm not Theo.
I put on my serious audiophile music when I'm hitting the weights. Nothing gets me fired up like smooth jazz. All right. Any other topics? We've exhausted my limited brain capacity.
Andrew, can I convince you to measure AirPods Pro 2 on 28?
Yeah, I feel like I have already at some point.
On 5128?
If I didn't, I believe I did at one point. And I found that
you can find that.
I can do it again, but like we found that it's quite variable depending on how loud it is, right?
Yes. Had you also primed it though?
Yeah, because you have to. You have to cover the thing, otherwise it doesn't.
Find those measurements for me, please.
Okay. I'll try and look for them, or they should be on the drive if I did them. I know I at least did them on the 43AG. And that's when Sam came over to the office and brought his piece of cheese to spoof the measurements. and then no, so like he puts the cheese in the ear, right?
Mm-hmm.
To do the measurement, and it works, right? Because we tried all kinds of stuff at first because we didn't know how to spoof it.
Sure.
Dr. Olive recommended ham.
Mm-hmm.
So Sam comes over and brings a piece of cheese, and he puts the piece of cheese in the ear, and the measurement works. And then he eats the cheese.
Based.
What are you gonna do? Let some perfectly good cheese go to waste?
Yeah, he's just like, okay. He just starts eating the rest of the cheese. All right.
Joel says Blaine's low audio standards will never not surprise me. I mean, they're not that low.
Oh, actually, there was a really good Headphi, not thread, but like really good idea for a thread that Android posted. Let me see if I can find it.
Yes.
Yeah, hold on.
Shoutouts to Android.
Shouts out to Android. That's the boy right there. Okay. Has anyone else gone up, then back down the audio gear ladder?
Yes.
And they follow that up with saying, I've been into headphones for about 10 years. I've tried many higher end headphones, but ended up selling off basically everything in favor of a good old HD600 and a JBL Encore Party speaker.
Yeah,
and
so,
dude, I actually got a JBL speaker recently, and it's surprisingly decent.
They're tight, dude. Like, especially the ones that are for
like
outdoor
wireless
stuff, like parties and stuff.
The boombox one has surprisingly good response and dispersion.
Yeah,
turns out, science. There's something to it.
Yeah, science, bitch.
But I brought it up because Joel saying Blaine has low standards for audio. Obviously, Blaine has bad taste, but I feel like that's a different thing.
What was it that Sean Olive
But
said?
I feel like,
Accounting for bad taste is one of life's greatest challenges.
Hey,
but I feel like in general, a lot of the people have been around a long time, and Blaine has been around a long time.
Yeah,
Uh,
60 years.
They
at
go
least.
up, they go up a ladder, trying some stuff, and then eventually they just settle with what exactly works for them.
Yeah, so
in their specific
I
use
have
case.
a take on this. I have done this. I mean, to a certain extent, this is my life
As have I.
because you know I've gone up to the LCD 4s and the whatever D8000 Pros and you know Sysfaras and all this stuff, and certainly there are experiences that are interesting to be had, right? I've then been like, okay, no, maybe actually what I actually want is like a clear, or I don't know, like something closer to like, you know, it's not the top of the expense mountain, it's more in the middle.
Sure.
And then I
Joel
think
says I'm unwilling to listen to music below a certain sound quality threshold. That's the hottest of all takes.
actually I am. I'm there.
That's a terrible take.
No, because the sound quality, the threshold to get good sound quality is not that high, is what I'm saying. So having gone back down, I go back to the HD 600 all the time, and headphones that are more like, we would consider them like classically mid-fi, right? I said that and then a siren went back down to the HD 600.
Whoa,
Nope.
He said mid-fi. He said mid-fi.
Yeah. But my reasoning is actually more to do, I mean, I'll just in part, yes, because the HD 600 is a great headphone, but also comfort and weight. A lot of the, you know, esoteric and expensive stuff and things that even I might be like, yeah, this is subjectively enjoyable. They're heavy as shit, or uncomfortable in some way, or inconvenient in some way. I can't use them wherever, right? And so, yeah, I think going back down makes a perfect amount of sense, especially because you're able to get good stuff at low prices as well, and oftentimes better. Like I would say the HD 600's mids and treble are still some of the best in the game, and all it needs is like a bass shelf. And that's the easy thing to do. So I'm perfectly happy to go back down the ladder.
Yeah. And I think most people who are around long enough and have tried stuff will generally at some point hit the inflection point where they're like, okay, I have too much stuff. I just want to chill, maybe move on to another hobby, keep the things I really like, or, you know, just pare down to the things that they actually use every day, because you can't use more than one headphone at a time.
Well, I mean, you can try. Watch.
Yes, you can try.
Watch.
No, you're gonna do this on stream? Okay, there's one. Oh, I guess two, cause dusk. Uh-oh.
No.
Uh-oh.
No, that would be bad. I'm not gonna stack as far as.
So I know you can't talk about sonic impressions of Sus Unveiled. Can you talk about comfort?
It's good. Same as.
Okay. Yeah, I just didn't know if it was any different.
I don't think so.
Cool.
Aesthetically, it's much better than the previous one because it doesn't have that stupid wooden inlay thing that I hate.
Oh yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah.
That is a plus, actually.
So, it looks less good when you have the grills off because that's when you get anxiety. But or where not the grills, the magnetic plate thing. But yeah, I don't know. I would say it's a good looking headphone, and it's a comfortable headphone. That's my judgment, you know, based on things that are also available for everybody else to see. Maybe not the comfort parts, but it's the same as the Sysfara.
God, yeah, the comfort was just one thing I haven't really in our circle.
Yeah.
Talk about if it was different or not. So just wondering.
Yeah, but I'll give you another example where going back down the ladder might not work for me, and it's the HD 620S. And even though I actually didn't like, the sound is not difficult to get it to sound good, right? Despite, I mean, we obviously know like the fine grained stuff and the treble's not something to be that concerned about, but like the things that you would fix would be like the bass and the 500 hertz kind of feature, right? But despite that, I wouldn't go back down to that because it's so bloody hot. It's a headphone that it's got, you know, encompassing leather pads, and it's just,
yeah,
as DMS put in the video, you know, the sun is a deadly laser. and I definitely feel it with that one. So,
Yeah.
it's not universally applicable, but I do think there are merits to the less expensive stuff that is good, because there's a lot of highly competitive stuff in the. We wouldn't say, like, again, I hate the term mid-5, but like what would have traditionally been thought of as that.
Sure.
I don't know, Kryn, what do you think?
Yeah, that's I like to go down sometimes. It's just like, I have a lot of the high end stuff. Mega 5 EST is not say high end, but let's say I have the Viento. I haven't used the Viento in a hot minute actually, because as much as I like it, it's just the base is not there. So sometimes it's just the cheaper stuff has better qualities in some regard. That the high end stuff would be better as all rounders, but sometimes you just want a specialist, right? So and of course but then again, I'm also in a weird, unique case where I just have a collection of IEMs that no one else on the planet also really has. So it's like, yeah, sometimes I like to just go down the cheap rabbit hole because I feel like it. But most of the time, I just use Dusk and just forget about it.
I will say though, I mean, with IEMs, it's a bit of a unique situation, because it's like there's now a better recognition of what good is than there would have been before, and some of those products are in the sub $500 price range, to begin with, and there are new ones that are coming out that are part of this sort of new paradigm as well. So like I would say I would prefer to use, the DaVinci or the Dusk default DSP or the MegaFest over, let's say, the high-end products of yesteryear anyways, if you know what I mean, right? Like I would prefer to use, like I'm thinking about it.
I think for IEMs it's interesting because in the high-end space you have a lot of very esoteric and weird signatures in the top end of the price brackets. And as much as the high end crowd would like to say that, oh, this is objectively the best signature ever, it's just weird. It's like a lot of these things are just weird, and it makes more sense to go down to a much more reasonable price point where the tunings tend to be much more catered to a wider audience because they have to cater to a wider audience. The high end space is just filled with the weird stuff because, quite frankly, a lot of the big players are just deaf. Anything would work for them. They just want to spend money. Yeah. I realize this, and it's just stupid, and I just don't like it.
But there are some good high-end products.
When you say big players, you mean customers, right?
Yeah, like the people in the high-end crowd, like the people who would spend more than, I guess, $2,000 to $3,000 on an IEM. They don't accept the fact that sometimes their really esoteric IEMs are just not palatable to the general crowd, but they are, because they're just tuned weirdly. And it's not just IEMs, right? It's also the same in the speaker world, where it's like you kind of top out at Genelecs, and anything more expensive tends to be very weird and objectively bad, but people still like them because why? Because they spent $60,000 on the pair.
They like it because it's expensive.
You can't just say
yeah. I get what you mean. I
wouldn't even say that they like the weird stuff. I feel like it's at a point where it's just like, I've spent so much money and I have to like it.
You're committed. Yeah, and then you go on Headphone, and then it's support group for product owners.
And then they tell everyone, like, look how much I love my setup, and it's actually like, you could have just gone, I don't know. I might be disparaging them too much at this point, but it's one of those cases where it's like, the lower there is a sweet spot where the market has to know what is the best for the most amount of people, and that is definitely not in the high-end crowd.
What do you
definitely? Yeah.
There are still some things that are really quite good in the high end, though. Like I would say the U6T is quite good in IEMs. I would say the Storm.
Yeah, but at that point, I feel like because the high end market is, in terms of the number of models that are available, is massive.
Yeah,
huge. But the kind of IEMs that we as the people who sniff graphs and whatnot, we know that are good, quote unquote good, is the exception rather than the norm by a
Yes.
huge margin.
But that's also so. Like, what are your thoughts on the Subtonic Storm?
It's good. I think it's a great idea. Okay, here's the thing. I'm friends with them. So that's the reason why I don't review their stuff.
Sure.
I've been very open to them from at least from a manufacturing perspective. I've always expressed the fact that whatever that they're doing is overly complicated and way more expensive than it should be. But people like that complex. It's the same way how people like high-end watches, where it's the complexity that makes it valuable as opposed to the sound.
Yeah, and also like the story and lore around it.
But the sound is
everything.
Yeah.
Sound is kind of secondary in that market. I know I'm going to piss off a lot of people when I say that, but it is true. Where it's from a manufacturing perspective, you could simplify the setup of something like the Storm, for example. Because right now they're using, I think, 7 crossovers, which from a manufacturing perspective is, what the fuck are you doing? Because and it's not just 7 crossovers. It's like 7 crossovers and like 4 or 5 of them are band passed, which means 4 or 5 of these crossovers have both a low pass and a high pass. So it's so complicated to the point where I'm like, why are you doing this when there's so much more of a simpler way to do it? But to them, it's like, oh, we do it because it's complicated. We think it makes for a better sound, which I'm not going to argue against because that's their philosophy. And that is what contributes to what makes it very expensive. Now, does it actually sound like its price tag? That is a very different topic altogether. But at least in terms of value, there's the fact that it does take a lot of money to make a Storm. It does take a lot of complexity to make a Storm, and therefore it is valued as a high value IEM as opposed to something like, let's say, like a 700 Zero, where it's just not Dusk. Like Dusk is, let's say 700 Zero, like on the complete end of the spectrum, where just like it's super easy, it's just dumb manufacturing where anyone can just make one, and that's why it's cheap. So there's like on one end of the spectrum, it's cheap because it's just so easy to make, and on the other end of the spectrum, it's complicated because it's intentionally complicated.
So I'm reminded of I think of like some of the new RAL stuff, where I think it's priced at something like 10 grand or something. It's like crazy.
One?
Yeah,
but the
Amanis and
are you trying to restart conflict with fucking
no I'm more just reminded of well, it's actually something we talked about a long time ago on this stream, where it's like there are many different ways to do good sound, right? And some ways are just more expensive to do it than others. And so part of the, I mean, I do like the comparison to watches because it really is like that, where it's like you can tell time with just like a fucking phone, but that's not why people aren't buying watches to tell time.
No, they're buying watches because they want jewelry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. Like, I do think though, in the audio space, a lot of the people who are spending crazy amounts of money on this stuff do genuinely feel that they are getting a better experience because of it, like a better auditory experience. They feel also that there is a better acoustic. There are better acoustic properties to these things.
And like in Storm's case, there is some basis to that. Like it is very well tuned, pretty much across the board. Like even the treble stuff, where like it's more than I would ever go for.
Well, overall, I mean, like
it's a very reasonable tuning.
It's actually one of the more normal sounding high-end IEMs that doesn't go for crazy esoterica. It goes for a generally solid, palatable sound signature with just like a bit of editorialization sprinkled up top. and I think that's a great thing. So it's like, yes, I can understand why there's a sort of a critical negative judgment about the rich, let's say, the people with more money than sense. But I don't want to discount those products from potentially actually being good as well, because I think there are examples of them. And so that just because there are some that are, more esoteric and only really speak to a particular niche, or maybe are appreciated for the wrong reasons, there are also ones that are probably appreciated for the right reasons and are genuinely good. You know,
Yeah, and it's also not necessarily our place to like determine what the right reasons are for a given customer. Like if someone just wants to buy Storm because it's a pretty IAM in their opinion.
I think the
Yeah.
lore is a big factor.
the lore,
The what?
absolutely,
Oh,
the lore is a big
absolutely,
factor.
yeah, for
Although
sure.
this does bring me to something that I've been pondering during this conversation.
What's up?
People talk about audio lore, and yet nobody is writing audio fan fiction yet. And I really think that's a missed
Oh
opportunity.
God.
You start with fan fiction and you end with something else.
We should have cut his mic as well as his camera.
All right, we got about 10 minutes left before I need to go.
Oh, okay.
I need to finish a video. So
I'm just saying, you could ship Kryn with people.
No.
We could have / Kryn fiction.
No.
Why is this what you're choosing to do with the last 10 minutes of our stream?
I've got to get this in somewhere.
You're not making any money off it, though. I don't
mean,
get it. What's the incentive?
So I actually think that
Causing
this
you
is
pain.
No, but hold on. I actually don't think this is a bad idea, even from like a commercial standpoint. If we were to produce a product, why would we not include a short story that is the lore of the person behind it, like the collaborator or manufacturer or whatever, right? There's something fun about that people would respond positively to.
Yeah, like whenever Kryn does a video about one of his collabs, it's always a really good time to hear.
But it's a video. Like there could also be additional, nuggets of whatever, right? That contribute to
well,
the
it's
lore.
I mean, it's lore no matter where you put it.
It's true. Yeah. Somebody needs to write critical fan fiction for the next collab, the next project.
God.
And you need to ship it with that in the box, right? Like it's a little booklet.
Just to be very clear, I had nothing to do with this. Kryn.
It's like a what are the things where you like I forget what that's called, where it's like there's a picture that moves it's not stop motion. It's like
Flip book?
Yeah, flip book. And it's like it's just Critical doing something in the flip book.
Sean Olive.
God.
No, that's DMS. We've established.
Oh, guys.
See, now that's the logic. That's the inevitable conclusion of audio fan fiction, is that it turns into stories about DMS. Never mind.
Guys,
you're reaching for the spray bottle. You're like, you're ready. But
someone says that gives them the idea to upsell IAMs with booklets. That is an interesting question. Like, if you gave people the option to buy IEMs with or without the waifu stuff, would they pay a premium for it?
I'd pay money to
have
the
it
waifu
or to not have it.
Either way.
I think they would pay a premium to have it, yeah.
Yes, and I would pay a premium to have it removed. But a booklet, I think, is that's fairly low cost. But
is the lore booklet, is it true or is it made up?
No, it's made up. I mean, it can have like metaphors or have truth in it, but like it can. I think it's more fun if it's something totally unhinged, right?
It is more fun.
Yeah, I like 50 Shades of Kryn sounds like a good time. I'm just.
Oh my god!
Please, God, no.
Somebody in the chat needs to write this. Or
wait, I own this server. I can literally mute him.
You can literally. Well, it's not me, is it?
No, well, me. I can mute any of you.
Okay.
Yes, but
Daniel Barry says, imagine the fanfic is written on the back of the Target compliance card. He's a genius.
The back of the compliance card?
Like, so you have like an individualized FR measurement. We could put a QR code though, and it could like take you to like to like a, I guess it's not Flash anymore, but to like a HTML5 video detailing the lore.
So then it just becomes anime.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the logical conclusion of putting anime girls on boxes.
No, that's a step towards the logical conclusion. We don't need to go to the logical conclusion.
You had to take it.
You guys are both complicit in this.
Yes.
Joel says that I'm 90 because I said Flash. Well, I'm sorry. I don't remember what you use for fucking internet video majigs these days.
Oh,
No, I agree
God.
with Joel on this take. I would pay up to $10 more for waifu-less packaging.
For waifu-less? Yeah.
Waifu free.
What's
Yeah.
What's
Okay, so
interesting
Kryn, are you gonna start selling marked up waifu, like no waifu edition?
You can have the Andrew edition. You know, the
Just
regular
mark it
edition,
up
and
for the
$10 more
waifu
for it.
edition.
No, waifu-less should be cheaper.
No.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
no
yes, it
waifu
should be cheaper, but
Yes.
why make it cheaper if it can be more
We,
expensive?
we want financial incentives to stop this trend in the hobby.
Well, no, the no waifu one should be more expensive to gauge how much actual interest there is.
There you go. This is the long game.
Well, we already kind of have the inverse where with some of the truthier IAMs, you can buy additional merch of the mascot girl.
Wait, you can?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Unfortunately,
They have, like
yes.
they have a block toy.
Wait, does
uh,
that mean that we'll be able to get the fucking, like, a little statuette of the Kryn Sona thing?
No, no,
that doesn't
specifically
exist yet.
Truthier's mascot.
Oh.
Yeah. But for now,
Kryn, if you sold that, how much would you sell that for?
I don't even want to think about it.
Such a cursed conversation.
see, I don't. You know how like the Kryn waifu, it's not actually Kryn. It's like an interpretation of Kryn as a waifu.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What if it's just Kryn though?
Well, no, so I've been thinking, actually, hold on a second.
Yeah, that'd be better.
So, the Kryn waifu is 2-color, right? Because white on black.
The new one
So-
is
it's-
there's some
it's fully
some
covered.
shades in there. There's, like I said, 50
Oh,
shades. of
right,
Kryn.
yeah, there's the flesh tone.
Oh, God.
What I was gonna say is, like, nowadays with how easily you can get 3 or 4 color FDM printers, someone could just like mock up a 3D model, and then people could print their own Kryn waifus.
That's a good point.
I
How many people have 3D
I'm sorry,
printers?
Corinne. I'm so sorry. This is happening.
I mean, what
I
about Kryn bobbleheads that you could put in the, or something like that?
I know people want to buy my IEM because my face is on it. Like I try to avoid. You realize that in all of my collabs, I don't even put my logo on the IEMs.
Yeah, you're quite ardent about that. That's why I'm saying you should sell the statue separately.
Mm. That's the collector's edition.
Exactly.
Actually, I hadn't thought of that until now, Corinne. I actually really appreciate you doing that. I don't like logos.
Yeah, I also
stuff.
don't like logos.
Oh.
Confirmed.
I don't like because my logo is fairly big, which is the point. Like it's really good as a fav icon.
Yeah, sure.
But it's too ostentatious when it's put on the faceplate, I feel. So to me, I'm just like, let's just avoid doing that. Just put it on the packaging, and let's just
Totally
let
good for the packaging.
yeah.
Great for the packaging, actually, I would say. But yeah, not on the face.
Yep, and that's well, we're not going to talk about that in this stream, but you know my concerns with logos on products.
Even Joel says logos are bad, and
Yeah.
he designed sometimes.
Based. That's the first time
Yeah,
I've
just
ever
a-
said based out loud, but it's based.
Wow.
Welcome to
just
being a
fast.
millennial. You have reached 2011.
That tracks. I'm about 13 years too old.
So I've got really bad news about what happens in 8 years.
What happens in 8 years, Blaine?
Well, if he's in 2011, that's when COVID happened.
Well, 8 or 9 years.
Yeah,
I mean, there's lots of really bad things that have happened since 2011. I actually think that 2011 was, a good time.
I really don't agree. That was like part of the depth of the Great Recession. I disliked that time.
Yeah, but I
immensely.
was actually no. For me, it was 2012 to 2014 were the good years.
Yeah, I was a child. It was fine.
Super Review says if you put logos on the IEMs, you won't have room for Phoebos on the
Okay.
IEMs.
What's the
But-
Phoebos?
What is a Phoebo?
Okay, what? What do you
It's high senior.
fakes? Fake fans.
What is a
Yeah.
Phoebos? Oh shit!
Phoebos is the
yes.
yeah, it's the text on the faceplate of the Mega 5.
Aha.
Yes.
Oh, I
Oh,
don't know
it's back
I
there.
don't know about
Yeah.
that because I don't care about IEMs.
It would be better without it. However, do not underestimate meme power. I think Phoebos has kind of taken on a small life of its own, which has positively
It's
impacted.
not quite on the level of Let Music Burn though.
Opity?
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. Like,
Opity is still the
Let
best.
Music Burn got to the point where like even Blonde was aware of it and marketing towards that in their products, which is funny.
Well, they named one of
Opity
their
fe-
products the Opity, right?
That's
Opity and Dreams Part 2 was like the subtitle on the box.
Boy,
Yeah.
that's really blessed.
It took me way too long to figure out what Phoebos was when I was like looking at the. I was like,
Well,
what even
what
the
is
fuck is
Phoebos?
this product? Okay,
It's an acronym for Feel, Fe,
here,
the beauty B of O sound.
feel the.
Yeah.
Oh, this is
Phoebos.
yes,
So awesome.
with
Poor
like
thing, chat's right. That should be Fitbus.
That's not nearly as good though. Like you can say Phoebos out loud very.
well, it's
very
like
quickly.
feel fe and then beauty of sound.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Uh,
It is.
Your
backwards.
stream
Iron-
is why is
Iron
our
Beauty
stream
of Sound.
reversed?
It's not. It's
Oh.
it's because that's the way that.
Oh yeah, I guess it is reversed.
Yeah, because it's not reversed for us. He
Yeah,
is
it's not.
doing that. Like he is just spitefully reversing it to spite you. We can read that fine.
Wait, you can on Discord?
Yes.
I
Us
can.
in the
Yes.
chat, but not on YouTube.
Yeah. No. In the Discord
Not
on
for me.
YouTube. Yeah. Well,
It could just be my camera. That's.
do you just live? Well, but the thing is, we're looking at it through your camera
Yeah.
on your.
So,
So
like
we
no,
are getting.
everything else is correct. Like this is over there for me.
Well, yes, but like you're reversed. Everything is.
Yeah.
Everything on your
like looking at
camera
a
is
mirror.
for some reason reversed on the stream, and it's very weird.
That's just how it is.
But why?
I couldn't tell you. I have no idea why.
Because like you're looking left on the stream, so you're looking. God damn it! Stop changing which way you look. You're looking right on the call, and you're looking left on the stream.
I'm looking left in
Which
real life
mean-
right now.
Yeah, which means that. Well, I mean, you're looking to your left
Yes.
from our point of view.
I'm
on,
looking to my
on
left
the
in real
call.
life.
But I mean, what I mean is that
Because
you're
Andrew
looking
is
at
not
Griffin,
his-
like at his box, but
What?
not on the stream for some reason.
What?
I feel like I'm developing
No, I'm
schizophrenia.
Do we
Joel
have...
has answered the question. It's because Andrew is capturing his own Discord through OBS, and Discord shows the mirror view to Andrew. So it's like look in the mirror and make more. that.
So the robot is correct. It's because I'm
Yeah,
capturing...
the robot is correct.
Yeah.
Is there a way to turn off that mirroring? Because this makes my head hurt.
Maybe.
Probably.
Well, maybe we'll figure it out for the next one. And on that terrible disappointment, it's time to...
Jesus Christ, that's how
Oh
we're
wait,
ending this?
I had a pitch for Kryn.
Okay,
I had a
okay,
pitch for
okay.
Kryn.
Oh yeah.
for-
yeah.
For the Kryn waifu doll, the packaging.
Oh
could be
God,
like,
wait, no, don't pitch
a
Brandon.
bottle?
How do I?
like maybe like a glass container.
Oh.
The closer this gets to being a legitimate idea, I get more and more.
See, I'm gonna, if I release a product or a collab, it's gonna have a booklet, and the booklet is gonna contain Frank Jackson's "What Mary Didn't Know." It's just the whole thing.
Can somebody actually hold on? No, I'm going to offer a bounty. I will pay $50 to someone who writes fan fiction of Andrew Park and Mary from What Mary Didn't Know.
Yes, $50 is actually no. That's actually good because philosophy majors are poor. People who've read that are poor, guaranteed.
Oh my God, Blade, you're gonna have to pay out a lot of money.
Well, no, I didn't say I would do it repeatedly. It's a first
Once.
come, first serve.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to stipulate that. First come, first serve, people.
If you release a product, it better have a miniature dad hat in the box. Is this a dad hat?
That is indeed. For some reason, people started calling baseball caps dad hats.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't
Like-
get it.
I wear a hat because it is convenient to the viewer, so they don't get blinded by the sheer dome of it all.
Joel is correct that philosophy majors on average make more than most undergrad degrees. However, Joel, how does that change when you remove people who have law degrees? Really? Even when you exclude the people who went to law school?
So
What
I
about people in
I
higher
mainly mean the
education?
people
What
who
happens when you
stuck
take them out?
in academia are the poor ones.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, people who've graduated with philosophy undergraduate degrees often go on to do things that make them more money. That's reasonable.
I actually, when I first enrolled in college, I was planning on majoring in philosophy.
And then you wised up.
Well, not really.
So
I just made different mistakes.
I think the next step for us is to enroll listener in some philosophy classes.
There's so many better classes you could put me in if you want to pay for classes. Put me in EE classes, please.
No, philosophy is
I
punishment
could
for something.
teach you some of the basic stuff.
Do it.
Philosophy-based IEMs.
They make you think deeper above 10K. I just read that.
Damn. Also, Andrew, are you gonna show people your waifu eventually? Not your waifu, your husbando, your anime-ified visage.
So, Andrew Parton, I know that you don't understand what listener means. Husbando is the
I could
male
infer
equivalent
that.
of a waifu.
I could infer that. I'm not. Never mind. I don't have one. What do you like?
Wow, so disrespectful. I made you one, and you didn't make it your Discord PFP.
Oh no, but it was my Slack PFP for a while.
Oh
yeah, and then you changed it
to the best
Terrible.
PFP ever.
I don't even know what it is currently. I feel like you changed it a lot, actually.
Yeah,
like you were Jordan Schlansky at one point.
Yeah,
which was very funny.
Because I have conversations with Andrew regularly, and he regularly comments on the ridiculousness of my PFP. So I have to come up with a new one that's more ridiculous every week.
Got it.
Andrew the Greater, that is.
Okay, yes. Well, in that case, we should. We need to make a waifu version of the husbando, Andrew.
Okay, that works.
Moots in chat has the good take. Husbandos are over waifus.
Yeah, honestly, we just need more diversity of it. Like, if we're gonna do the whole anime characters on box things, we should include some men. We should include maybe some different body types, like muscle men, muscle girls. Anyone? Come on, chat.
I think the problem with husbandos is that we are in a very skewed hobby.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a pretty gay.
Like, I look at my YouTube stats, and it's like genuinely 1% females, and I'm like, you know what? I would like a husbando, but nah.
Yeah. I just think it'd be more fun.
Okay, someone in chat
plus
says
size waifus.
Anime furries unboxes when?
It's inevitable. That's almost certainly happening at some point.
I'm surprised that hasn't happened already.
Sure, it'll have the same broad appeal.
No, it doesn't need to.
Yeah, I mean, it's less about broad appeal and more that it's really well targeted to a specific audience.
Yeah.
Mm.
See, I want, I think plus size waifu is where things should go.
Yeah, I want plus size. I want muscle. I want.
It's impressive that you've managed to take this to a place where I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah. I don't want any of it. It's the reality. It's just
very fair.
Gone. But yeah. Okay. On that terrible disappointment of muscle husbando waifu stuff.
We'll make sure to rename this stream that, by the way. Muscle husbando.
Yes.
Live stream.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it is time to end because I do need to go to the gym actually, and then I need to work on another video. And we've been going for 3 hours.
Videos, so it's time for all of that.
Yeah, man. I work on the weekends. What can I say? But yeah, thanks to everybody for tuning in. Thanks to our lovely guests. Thanks to Critical, as a obligatory, die busk,
Yes, die busk. Yeah. We have everything in stock right now.
There you go. And also a big thanks and shout out to headphones.com for making all of this possible. Without headphones.com, this doesn't exist. So consider checking out headphones.com if you want to read our articles or check out for any potential audio related purchases they might want to do in North America, at least. We got you covered. Okay, that does it. And we'll see you guys in the next one.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Figure out how to stop this thing.